meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals is hereby called to order. This board was established pursuant to Section 519.13 of the Ohio Revised Code by the Anderson Township trustees to provide administrative relief to any person or entity adversely affected by the Anderson Township zoning resolution. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Sion?
Here.
Mr. Halpin?
Here.
Mr. Shekels?
Here.
Mr. Nye?
Here.
Mr. Lawrence?
Here. Thank you for coming to this meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals. Please be aware that this meeting is audio and videotaped and may be carried live on television. First, I'll outline our procedures. A summary of the appeal is presented by the staff, then the appellant will present their case. The board members may then ask questions of the appellant. After that, all persons supporting the appeal will then be permitted to testify, one at a time, after being recognized by the chairman. When those persons supporting the appeal are finished, those opposed to the appeal will then be permitted to testify and or ask questions of the board after being recognized by the chairman. All persons wishing to testify, whether for or against an appeal, may only do so after being sworn in. When testifying, each person must come forward to the podium, speak into the microphone, state their name, address, and any affiliation to the case. All persons testifying will be limited to 4 minutes unless a board member requests additional time. All testimony is given to the board only. No comments or questions are to be directed to the appellant or anyone else in the audience. The board will only hear new, non-repetitive evidence or questions. Should someone wish to show support of previous testimony, they may do so by following the testimony procedures and stating their support of previous testimony. Now, for all those persons giving testimony today, please stand. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
None from staff.
Can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda.
You got a question?
Mr. Chair, there's a lot of people here today, an unusually large number of people. I wonder if it might make sense to hold the crowd on what they're here for and maybe rearrange the agenda to get anything where nobody's here for it or one or two people are here for it, maybe move that to the front, get them out of here.
Any objections from staff for that?
That's up to you.
Council, any objections from council?
No objections from me.
I don't know how we might do that, but maybe just a show of hands.
First case we have on our agenda is the 4320 Mount Carmel Road. Through a show of hands, who's here for that case? Keeping count there, Mr. Nye.
Yeah, about a dozen.
And the Evans case at 4455 Mount Carmel has been continued. I'm presuming nobody is here for that case. There are a few. So for that case, that's continued. What's the next date?
It'll be December, the first Thursday in December.
So that's going to be heard first Thursday
5th.
in December.
December 5th.
December 5th. So you're welcome to stay if you'd like to, but if you're here particularly for that case, you don't need to stay. And then we also have case the address 6537 Kentucky View. Who's here for that?
That's a lot of them. We're gonna call that 2 dozen.
Do you want to make a motion then, Mr. Nye?
Well, you want to take the other twos? Let's check.
Where the other two fall?
I mean, we've got about
Signs for the...
1 dozen and then 2 dozen, so that's,
There's 2 more cases.
There's 2 more cases.
yeah, but considering the amount of,
The
I'm
other
so,
2 must be almost no one, right? Who's here for the Great Parks cases? Mr. Chair, I move that we take cases 25 and 26, the Great Parks cases, and move them to the front of the agenda so those 5 or so people can go.
Second.
motion and second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye. With that, we'll start off with case 25-2024 BZA. Will the staff please read the summary?
Point of order, sir. Minutes?
Oh,
We're
yeah.
gonna do minutes
Sorry.
today.
Any changes to tonight's minutes?
None from me.
Nope.
We can motion to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
We have a motion and a second.
Second.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
And with that, we'll continue, we'll move into case 25-2024.
Thank you, Chair. This case comes up, the applicant was Expedite the Deal LLC on behalf of the Hamilton County Park District Board, commonly known as Great Parks of Cincinnati, or Hamilton County, excuse me, which is the property owner. Both of these cases are quite similar. One is going at Woodland Mound on their Nordic Road entrance, which is this case, and then the following case will be Withrow Nature Preserve on 5 Mile Road. So for this one, which is the Woodland Mound one, location 8250 Old Kellogg Road, and the request is a variance for a proposed freestanding sign, 80.5 square feet, where 40 square feet is the maximum allowed per Article 5.5 F4 of the Anderson Township zoning resolution. So they're requesting a sign of 80.5 square feet, height of 8 feet, maximum width of 14 feet, a combination of aluminum, wood, and steel construction. I am noting that per the zoning resolution, signs taller than 6 feet include the whole structure, whereas signs under 6 feet, the sign area is only calculated based off of the text and the copy and not the full structure. So were this a 6-foot sign over 40 square feet in total surface area, it would be compliant and able to be approved administratively. And then the only zoning certificate on file for the park that we could find was for the Season Good Nature Center in 1989. It's actually going up here. So this is the property map, aerial imagery, and the topography. Again, just clarifying that the sign is going up here on the Nordyke entrance, not the Old Kellogg entrance. Here's some photos taken from along the road. This is from the sign looking. The first one on the left is looking south, and the one on the right is looking north from where the sign is. And these are photos looking north towards the sign as currently exists, a closer view of the sign, and then looking south towards the sign along Nordyke Road. This is the applicant's submission. Again, showing the location of the proposed sign, replacing the existing sign. This is how the applicant shows that the proposed sign will show if approved. And then the dimensions of the sign. And now the applicant did have that in their submission that calculated the surface total area is 68.88 square feet, which differs from staff's calculation shown here. So this is how we got the 80.5 square feet. And so if the board wishes for clarification on the applicant's number, that can be addressed during their testimony. But this is how staff found our number. I just wanted to address that inconsistency. Staff is of the opinion that the variance is substantial. The sign is roughly 2 times the maximum surface area allowed in a residential district. The essential character of the neighborhood would be altered. It is a largely wooded area with residences nearby, and it would extend likely 24 feet from the road, which would put it in the trees on the side of the road, potentially detracting from the natural character of the neighborhood and the residential character nearby. No impact to government services. As previously mentioned, the property owner's predicament could feasibly be obviated if the sign were 6 feet or less. Only that sign area, which is calculated out to 12.74 square feet roughly, would be well under that 40 square foot maximum, and so staff finds that that is an avenue that the applicants and the property owner could have taken to resolve their predicament without pursuing a variance. The spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would not be met. The intent is to maintain balance between neighborhood character and non-residential uses. This granting the variance would disrupt that balance by prioritizing a non-residential use in a residential district and a residential area. And again, the applicant suggests that the township should be flexible in its zoning due to the sign being a public rather than commercial use. However, the township sign regulations are intentionally designed to be content neutral. And in addition, signs for parks, churches, in residential districts are already accounted for in the zoning resolution, which the applicants have requested a variance from those guidelines. And here are the standards to be considered for this variance.
Any questions for staff? None. Seeing none, will the appellant please step forward, state your name, address, and your affiliation with the case.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Deal. I am the owner of Expedite the Deal LLC. I am the agent for Stratus Unlimited, the manufacturer of the signs, and Great Parks. I represent them both. My name is spelled TRACEYDIEHL. My address is 6487 Hilliard Drive, Canal, Winchester, Ohio, 43110.
Is there anything else you wish to add to the staff report?
In addition to the staff report, I would like to discuss the criteria and how we got to where we are. Originally, the applicant submitted a sign that is much larger than what is before you this evening. We worked with staff to bring the sign down to the smallest sign that was available in the sign family. Great Parks is a government entity, and they are in the process of redoing the signage at all of the parks in Hamilton County, not just the parks in Anderson Township. The park signage is designed based on a hierarchy of what the signs should represent in level of what the park offers. These parks are prominent parks. They're some of the best parks that Great Parks has to offer. And so the signage that was originally proposed here represented the best parks that Great Parks has to offer. In discussions with staff, we went through the criteria and discovered that the signs were too large and brought them down to the lowest sign that's available in the sign family for the project. And this is a large-scale project. It's not just Anderson Township. The property that is in question doesn't yield a return, so that criteria is not really applicable here. This is public land, and it's a nonprofit. The variance being substantial in square footage, it is, but if you measure only the text, whereas if the sign was 6 feet in height, it wouldn't be nearly as visible. That extra 2 feet allows for snow and ground coverage, and it allows for trees and growth of the surrounding area. So if it's 8 feet in height, that allows for all of those conditions to be taken into consideration. Then the square footage now measures the whole sign. But if you were not measuring the whole surface area of the sign and you were measuring just the text and just the graphics, it would be compliant with what the code allows. The variance does not adversely affect governmental services. It is a non-illuminated sign. It's not internally illuminated. It doesn't detract motorists or cause obstructions. The property owner did not purchase the property. This is not a new purchase. This is existing signage that is in disrepair that needs to be replaced. The property owner's predicament can be feasibly obviated through another method other than a variance. This is the smallest sign that they have available in the sign family. The whole sign family and project has gone through extensive amounts of governmental planning through governmental agencies that have come up with these designs. The spirit and intent behind the zoning ordinance is observed when you provide adequate signage that provides adequate information. I personally drove this area today. The roads are steep, windy, and hilly. There are a lot of motorist obstacles that you have to overcome when driving through here. The sign is aesthetically pleasing and designed to blend into the environment. It's not designed with bright, loud colors to stand out. It is designed to be muted and blend in, but still be visible. The proposal is for a sign that is going to be consistent with the spirit and the intent of the ordinance, which is to provide adequate signage that can safely be visible for all motorists, those that are familiar with the area and those that are not. I think it's also important to note that not all people that are visiting these park locations are going to come from within Anderson Township. These are people that are transient, coming for sporting events, coming for picnics, family gatherings, or just to use the park itself, and they may not necessarily be familiar with the area. So an adequate sign that is an updated version of what's existing is absolutely necessary for the park to continue to thrive. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. We have a representative from Great Parks here as well.
Do you know how big the sign that it's replacing is? I didn't get out to measure it, but do you know what those dimensions are? I feel like it was a year now, I can't find it.
So the existing sign is scaled in the drawings. It's not very clear, and it's a 6-foot height sign. And I'm not exactly sure what the square footage of it was.
So 6 feet high, though. And the
Yes.
highest part of this sign would be 8 feet, almost 10 inches.
Yes, 8 feet.
Main horizontal line would be 6 feet. Is that right?
It's when you build that sign into the road grade, the varying road grade and the ditch, it's going to give or take, it'll be 8 feet maximum, and then it'll go down from there.
In review with staff, did you make any attempt to reduce the signage beyond what you've done so far and fit within the guidelines of the township?
The sign that we proposed was 16 feet in height. This is the reduced signage. We reduced it in size by half, I believe.
And this is the sign that's going up in parks in Ohio?
This is the smallest in the sign family, and yes, it is one of the signs that is going. All the other signage in all of the other parks in Hamilton County will be this size or bigger.
Does that include the Kellen Road entrance to this park?
Yes,
Where I initially went looking for this?
yes, yes. But the variance tonight is for just this sign. Yes. They're doing the project in phases, so different phases are being handled at different times. And that has to do with funding.
No further questions?
That's all the question I
Thank
had.
you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this appeal? Seeing none, does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please step forward, state your name, address.
Did you say you're from Westchester?
I'm from Canal Winchester.
Okay, I live next door to Mr. Lee.
Ma'am, please come up
Ma'am.
to the podium.
And I think the sign they have there is fine. It blends in.
I'm sorry,
I've
what's
noticed.
your, could you please provide your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Bobby Ackley. I live at 7137 5 Mile Road.
Thank you.
And I've lived there for 30 years, and the sign, I don't think anybody has any problem seeing the sign as you drive down the road. It blends in with the area. They have beautiful wildflowers all around there, and it's very pleasing, and I don't know why they feel they have to come in, other than the fact they want all the signs to be the same, which to me sounds like an expense they don't need to. Did the park levy pass the other day? So they're going to.
The Anderson one did not. I'm
Yeah,
not familiar
well,
with the others.
yeah, so that's all I have to say. I mean, my neighbors and some of them didn't get one of these letters, I did. And we just think the sign that's there is fine. It's a natural color that blends in. It's not this big black and white shield type thing here. And we're not unhappy with it, so that's all I have to say.
Ma'am, just one point. Did you say your address was on 5 Mile?
I live right next to the nature.
Was this for the
preserve.
Withrow Nature Preserve?
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's the next case. This is the one on Nordic. Off
No,
of,
I'm on 5 Mile Road next to the Withrow.
yeah, that's the next case. This case is
Oh,
specific
I
to
thought
Nordic.
they said it,
You're
the
okay.
Withrow.
It's
Okay.
similar sign, similar. So, yeah.
Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Seeing none, can we get a motion to close the public hearing?
I move that we close the public hearing.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Who'd like to start us out?
I really like the parks. I use them regularly. I bought annual passes for as long as I could remember. But that said, I'm reluctant to approve signage that's twice the size that's in our standards. We more than likely would not be doing this for a commercial enterprise. We wouldn't approve a sign on pick your street, Beachmont, Corbly, is twice the size of what's specified for the township. So I am, for that reason, reluctant to approve it.
I don't think I agree with that. I think if this were a commercial enterprise on Nordic Road, you know, where there's not much else around, I think we might be more likely to. I think you're probably right, we wouldn't on Beachmont. It's a different area. I think one of the things I look at when I see this is that there is this, you know, a part of it that's, what, 3.5 feet wide and 2 feet, 1 inch tall, almost 1 inch tall, that sticks up above the 6 foot level. I don't know. Everything else is below 6 feet. And if we didn't have that little chimney, I don't know.
The acorn.
Yeah,
Foundation.
you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. If it didn't have that, it would be compliant. Or if you took off the base, it would be compliant. And so, you know, the variance here is, in some sense, really just, you know, 2 feet, 11/16 inches high, and 3 feet, 5 5/16 inches wide. And that seems very insubstantial. I think especially in this area, there really isn't a whole lot else in that area, in my experience. And as I was driving it today, I didn't think to like stop and like really analyze it. Because if you're going north on Nordic, as I was, there's some subdivisions off to the left, to the north of the park, that have some monument entrances that are pretty big. Now they're not 8 feet tall, but they are wide. They are substantial. I don't know if it's Trillium Ridge or there's like St. Ives or something. It's somewhere near the golf course. I forget what it is, but you know, this doesn't seem any more intrusive or out of place than any of those two. Again, those are not tall, but it seems to me that this would fit in pretty well with those, especially with there not being a whole heck of a lot else on that section of road. I don't think it changes the character of the neighborhood really at all. So, you know, I think you're right. If this were on Beachmont, we'd probably look at it very different, but it's not on Beachmont, I guess is what I'd say.
Well, it's, the issue for me becomes, are we making an exception simply because it's a government agency? And I don't find that a valid reason to make an exception just because it's a government agency. It's a very attractive sign. It's a very nice area. I like that. But we recently turned down signage on Beachmont for far less overreach than this.
Yeah, and I think if this were on Beachmont, no matter who the applicant was, I think we'd probably see it. But I'd like to hear what everyone else.
I'm okay with it.
I tend to think it's a much more attractive sign. I think that sometimes if you're not from this area, you're driving down Nordyke, it's very easy to blow right by the whole entrance. I don't really have a problem with it. Like Jeff said, you know, the highest point of 6 feet is just the great parks with the acorn, assuming it's an acorn, whatever that is on it. I mean, that's not, I don't see it as unattractive. I don't see it as obtrusive. I think it'll be fine.
I don't find it unattractive at all. It's a very attractive sign.
And given where it is, I mean, there's houses there, but there aren't a lot of houses there. It's not gonna block any vision. It's on the other side of the road. I don't have a problem.
Was there Any, are they gonna take any trees out to install it? No? Okay, good. That's it from me.
Any further discussion? Love to hear what you have to say. It's interesting and reminds me a lot of the other parks I've been through nationwide. I mean, it's got similar types of monuments and similar kind of, I don't think it's obtrusive based on the colors. I see both points, both sides there that's something the trustees set out, those are the rules, but then we also have the ability to grant those variances in these cases. It would seem to be some split of opinion. So let's see if we can get a motion and go from there.
Mr. Chair, with respect to case 25, I move that we grant the variance subject to conditions that construction be started within 1 year and completed within 2.
Second.
One note on that, our department director did request that if the variance is granted, that we request a more detailed site plan, since the current one does not show any right-of-way. So if that is, I just want to put that into your consideration.
I'll second.
Was that a complete motion, Mr. Nye?
I think so.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
No.
Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mr. Sion?
Aye. With that, this is tentatively approved. We'll reopen the public hearing and move on to case 26-2024. Will staff please read the report?
Again, this is a very similar request. Same sign, same size, different location, 7075 5 Mile Road, which is the main entrance, if not the only entrance, for Withrow Nature Preserve. Again, same sign, same size. We do have case 10, 2001 BZA regarding telecommunications tower in a different part of the park, as well as a gazebo and the existing freestanding sign are on file as zoning certificates for the township. Property map of the park and showing the location of this the existing and proposed sign. Aerial imagery of the park, topography of the park, existing sign. This one is a little different than the existing Woodland Mound sign. It's kind of a like a triangle angle. So that's the existing sign, and then this right-hand photo is looking from the sign east, and then this is looking from the west towards the sign, as well as from the kind of front of the sign towards that existing sign. Some other photos of the area around the existing sign. Here's the submission. And then the proposed location of the sign. And again, we would request a similar condition of a more detailed site plan should this be approved, as the last case was. And then the sign as shown by the applicants. And then our findings are are pretty similar. The main difference is that this is a more residential neighborhood. Let me go back to this one. So there are houses in the vicinity along 5 Mile, as well as the neighborhood over here, and houses that take 5 Mile frequently to get up to the highway. So that it is a bit more of a residential neighborhood, a bit more of a historic character than kind of the than Woodland Mound. That's really the main difference in our summary. Everything else is pretty consistent with what we had for the last sign. And here are the standards again.
Any questions of staff?
Just the question that I asked the applicant before, do we know the dimensions on the old sign? Again, I know the area pretty well, but I didn't think to measure.
I do not.
I believe that both of them were at or under 6 feet, so again, you're just measuring just the words on it, so again, it's measured differently.
The existing sign, though, is wider than
It's
this
quite
sign,
large.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, but again, as a part of when when our signed package and our zoning resolution was adopted, was intended to make signs smaller in the township just across the board. So this specific portion of the zoning resolution was kind of in reference to, again, making sure we have smaller signs in the township, I believe.
So do we know the variance between the existing sign and this one?
As far as what the
Size
specific
of it,
difference?
yes.
Well, again, since the letters are measured, so you're measuring,
So it's
again,
the
the
same
whole sign
variance.
compared to.
It's the same variance.
Well, this one I think might be a little bit larger than the one on Nordic, but again,
Very similar.
they're
Yes.
they're identical proposals, just in different locations.
Okay.
Good evening. For a matter of public record, my name is Tracy Deal, TRACEY DIEHL. My address is 6487 Hilliard Drive, Canal, Winchester, Ohio, 43110. I am the owner of Expedite the Deal LLC, and I represent Stratus Unlimited, the manufacturer, and Great Parks, the applicant. There are some differences in this situation that I want to point out. The existing sign is that angled sign, and the proposed sign is a smaller double-faced sign. A lot of times in sign ordinances, when your faces are not parallel, both sides of the face are measured, and so that would make that existing sign much larger than the proposed sign because the faces are parallel. One side is part of the allowance.
If, that's an if.
Yeah, I'm happy to go over the criteria as I previously did, or to save time because there's a lot of people here tonight. We can continue, and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Questions?
My only question is, do you know what the dimensions of that, like how wide is that sign?
The
This is
existing,
14, right?
yeah, the existing sign, I do not have any dimensions of it, but I can tell you that it's much wider than what we've proposed and slightly shorter in height.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions that we have? Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Ackley, you don't need to come up again. Your testimony was for this case, correct?
Right.
You just wish to repeat, you don't need to repeat, come back.
I
Okay.
was looking here to see if I might have.
Please step up to the podium if you have anything. Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this appeal? Seeing none, does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? You already had one opposition. Can we get a motion to close the public hearing?
I move we close the public hearing.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Who'd like to start us off with this discussion?
I will again, or maybe not again.
Go ahead.
I think my take is the same. I don't think, I think the variance is actually, smaller than it might seem based on the numbers once you kind of dig into what we're actually looking at here. I think it is going to be less obtrusive than the existing sign. So, in terms of spirit and intent, I think we are getting the smaller sign that is the intent of the zoning ordinance. I don't think it'll alter the essential character of the neighborhood. There are more houses closer, but again, we're giving it a smaller sign, and I don't think it's going to have any significant effect on the character of the neighborhood. Factor 4, doesn't really apply. Factor 5, yeah, they purchase the property with knowledge of zoning restrictions. That doesn't weigh heavily here. Factor 6, could they put up a smaller compliance sign? Yes, they could. Of course, they could. I just don't give that a whole lot of weight. I think, given the size of the variance, which I think is insubstantial, and I don't think it's really affecting the character of the neighborhood. So I'd be in favor of granting it, subject to the timing conditions and the plan conditions that staff asked for.
And I'll continue in the same vein as I did before. This is a substantial variance from what zoning has indicated they want for the community. I would not support this if it was for commercial enterprise, so I'm not going to support it because it's a governmental enterprise.
Any further discussion from staff? Sorry, from the board? We get a motion?
Mr. Chair, with respect to case 26, I move that we grant the variance subject to the conditions that construction be started within 1 year and completed within 2 years, and subject to the condition that the applicant provide the additional materials requested by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the staff, secretary, please call the roll?
For confirmation, did you also want substantial compliance per usual? Substantial compliance with the plan submitted as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Just want to clarify. Mr. Halpin?
Yes.
Mr. Shekels?
No.
Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mr. Sine?
Aye. With that, these are tentatively approved. Staff will be in touch for next steps. Move on to case 22-2024 BZA. Will the staff please read the report?
Sure. And maybe one note, there have been a few additional people that have walked in. Does it make sense to swear in anybody that would like to,
Yeah.
that maybe would like to speak tonight that hasn't been sworn in already?
Yeah, we can do that. For anybody who plans on testifying today, if you have not been sworn in, would you please stand? Please stand, raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. And staff, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Case 22-2024 BZA, submitted by Richard Tranter of Dinsmore and Scholl LLP on behalf of Kroger Incorporated, which is leasing the property from 4320 Mount Carmel Road, the property owner. Location is 4320 Mount Carmel Road, zoned industrial development. This is a conditional use request for a storage and distribution facility per Article 316C4 of the zoning resolution. The applicant is proposing to use the property for storage and distribution facility for quote last mile service for Kroger, Kroger's home delivery service, using they called Dockzilla mobile units, totaling 2,532 square feet with 9 grocery delivery van loading docks and 2 larger semi-truck loading docks. The applicant is proposing to use the existing office building to support the operations. Additional modifications to the property include repaving and striping of the parking lots, perimeter fencing, and landscaping. Storage and distribution are conditional uses per the zoning resolution in industrial districts. This property has quite a history. So in 1994, the zoning certificate was issued for a compost facility per case 14-1993. That use had ceased by 1995. In 2001, the zoning certificate was issued for blue chip pavement maintenance for the existing office building. 2007, zoning certificate was issued for the fuel tanks and the concrete pad that they sit on, as well as some driveway modifications. In 2016, a zoning certificate was issued for more driveway modifications, resulting in the current layout of that circular driveway and the concrete or the asphalt apron on the south side of the office building. In 2019, a zoning certificate was issued for the 30-foot by 50-foot carport and accessory structure located north of the driveway loop. A zoning certificate was issued to Evans Landscaping in 2021 for the private drive on this property and the adjacent property to the east. Most recently, a zoning certificate was issued for an expansion to the commercial storage area of the property. In May of 2024, the existing gravel storage area had been paved over by the property owner without applying for or receiving a zoning certificate from Anderson Township Planning and Zoning. Hamilton County Soil and Water sent the property owner a notice of violation on October 8th, 2024 that stormwater management for the existing storage area that had been paved is not adequate, and updating the stormwater management for the property would be necessary. Here's the property map. Mount Carmel Road is along the side. Here is the aerial imagery. Note that, and this will be shown in our drone imagery later in this presentation, that the site has since been paved since the Cage's aerial imagery was taken. Topography map, it slopes up a little bit towards the south west of the property, otherwise is pretty flat. So photo of the office building and some of the existing storage. You can see the fuel tanks in this image, as well as some of the accessory structures. The photo on the right shows north of the property. More photos of the area around the paved lot, some close-ups of the landscaping and the storage tanks, as well as looking south and back towards the office and garage. Here's some of that aerial imagery that we took. Here's one showing the whole site. And then that private drive is the one that's going off into the kind of upper part of this image from the bottom right corner. Here's the submission. This has kind of an overview of what that mobile dock unit looks like. The plans as submitted by the applicant. Okay. So the performance standards for conditional uses in industrial districts. So point 1, modifications by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The applicant requests a variance for Article 5.3L, which is one of our parking and loading sections, to permit less intense landscaping and buffering around the northwest portion of the lot, which is this area up here, which will be used for van storage. They will be complying with the requirements for this lot, which is where their employee parking will be. Staff finds that granting this variance would be a reasonable compromise, since the applicants will be adding parking islands which currently do not exist, and fully complying with landscaping for that employee parking lot, whereas the northwest corner is screened from non-industrial uses by existing vegetation. Initially the applicant proposed an 8-foot fence, but has informed staff today that they intend to comply with the 6-foot fence requirement, and they can confirm that in their testimony. Regarding admissions, staff is of the opinion that the applicant's statement that Kroger intends to comply with all applicable regulations would benefit from more elaboration. Staff believes that the plans comply with regulated substances. The only substances present will be those falling under 316C7B, which outlines the substances not considered regulated, which include limited amounts of vehicle fuel. Staff is of the opinion that this conditional use proposal meets the requirement of this standard. The proposed operations align with expected vibration and shock within an industrial area. Staff is of the opinion that more information is needed to make an informed assessment. The applicant states that Kroger's operations will be primarily indoors, but this is a distribution facility, and there will be movement and emissions from vans and trucks throughout the site. It's not clear how the proposed use would impact traffic and air quality in the area. Staff is of the opinion that the plans that were submitted were not detailed enough to fully assess the landscaping and lighting requirements. However, today the applicants did communicate that they are interested in submitting more information, and they can elaborate on that. Staff is of the opinion that the applicant will be enhancing the property by improving the working environment through the parking lot landscaping. For the general standards for conditional uses, the last mile distribution center aligns with the industrial purpose of the district, and Kroger will be investing in the property and enhancing its value for the owner and future tenants. There may be adverse impact for the properties which rely on access to Mount Carmel Road through the property due to increase in traffic. However, Kroger will also be increasing the value of adjacent properties as a result of its investment on its own property. No issues with protection of public services other than the Hamilton County Soil and Water violation, which staff requests that if the conditional use is granted, that a condition be added that compliance with government agencies would be needed before, in order to comply with the Hamilton County Soil and Water and any other outstanding issues. Consistent with, the application is consistent with adopted plans. The light industrial use of the site aligns with the future land use map in the 2022 comprehensive plan, and it aligns with multiple initiatives, especially facilitating enhancements in the Angkor area that will help increase economic development opportunities. And here are the standards to be considered. This is for the variance, and here's the general criteria, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Any questions for staff?
I will state, if the board were to approve this tonight, there are some conditions that we have. As Eli kind of mentioned, they did submit a new plan set today, and that kind of addressed some of the comments in this presentation. I'll let them address that directly during their testimony. But we do have some, again, conditions, again, if you were to approve it tonight, just to address the plans that are in front of you today.
Okay, so these are not additional plans that we have access to view?
No, they submitted them early today. Again, just so, again,
Are they
our conditions would be set up to, again, address
Sure.
our concerns in the presentation. This I believe was a good faith effort to show that they're attempting to comply with the zoning resolution, but
Sure.
I'll let them address that.
All right, are they architectural, site structural?
He has some to submit into evidence.
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
that might
Thank
be
you.
more appropriate if you want to take a look at them.
All right.
Any further questions for staff? Will the appellant or the appellant's representative please step forward, state your name, address, and present your appeal?
Yeah, let me get my team set up here. Take a seat. Can you hear me okay? All right. My name is Richard Tranter. I'm an attorney at Dinsmore Shoal, and I'm also the applicant acting on behalf of the Kroger Company with the permission of the current owner. And I understand also the owner's legal counsel is present tonight, Dan Utt, so if you have any questions. But again, I'm presenting on behalf of the Kroger operations application. Let me introduce some people to you.
Sorry,
So,
could you also provide your address, please?
oh, sure. You don't know where Dinsmore is? 255 East 5th Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45202, and 5th corner of known as the First Financial Center. Thank you. With me tonight, I have Akiva Freeman with Kroger. I also have Danny Verth, which can speak to operations if you have questions. And I also have Patrick Garrett, who is with, I got to look at your name, Dunham Blythe out of Louisville. Not a household name. Yeah, it's good. Is our engineer, and he can speak. And we also have another engineer if you have any questions on the photometric. For purposes of consistency or being concise here, which is not one of my strongest points, I have a number of exhibits. I just want to make sure I get them into the record. And to your counsel, do you want me to present them to you, or? Okay, I'll present them to Mr. Yoder since I know Mr. Yoder. I have exhibits A, B, and C, which are just aerial photographs, Google Earth, and they're magnified out, and then they just sort of process their way in. And I'll be making reference to them. And then further, the plans that were referred to, rather than submit plans if we were approved, subject to conditions to say, satisfactory photometric plan, satisfactory landscaping plan, our team made the effort to actually put plans together, though I know I could tell from Mr. Shekels' question or answering and having served on boards, you don't like getting plans at the last second. But again, remember, it could have been a condition subsequent, so we wanted to get something in front of staff to address what their questions were. So this exhibit D is the sheets from Denham Blythe, and they deal with photometrics, and they also deal with final landscaping plan.
Do you have more than one copy of those plans? Because I'd imagine the PZA members might want to individually be able to have and hold and know what you're talking about. So these will be the actual originals for it. Which we can just literally walk these down, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's just the previous one. No,
No, these,
We'll share.
can I ask a point of clarification first
Yes.
for both you and the staff? I see the first one's a site plan, C001, and we have a C001 in ours. Are the changes clouded on this one, or
No,
indicated in any way?
and I can go over those. And let me put it in this context, because there's a lot to unpack in the staff report. It was very comprehensive. I read everything. You guys are future lawyers, that's for sure. The basic request is for a special zoning certificate for a conditional use. And we had two potential variance issues. One's been already eliminated. One was for a fence at 8 feet in height, and we talked to Kroger, and 6 feet will suffice. The other variance issue relates to just a modification, which I think makes common sense, not to have parking islands on the west and the north for reasons I'll explain. And I'll go through the variance standards, which are very difficult under Ohio law. I think attorneys would recognize that. But it's more like collectively, can you meet those Duncan test standards? Because that's where the variance standards come out of. It's the Duncan test at, I think, 1987. So, but before you is a very simple request. We're in an industrial zone. You've had very intensive uses of this property, including paving companies and the like. What we're proposing in the world of land use is actually a lesser type use. It's a warehouse distribution facility. There's no manufacturing that's going to occur. We're not using heavy vehicles. One of the historical photos in that exhibit packet I gave Mr. Yoder, A, B, and C, will show 75 heavy trucks, excavation equipment, and the like. By comparison, And I don't ever try to be the fact witness, so if you have a specific question, but for purposes of summary to keep the hearing moving, what Kroger anticipates is basically 10 semi-truck deliveries in a 24-hour period. That would be the average. They come into these things called like a Dockzilla, which I hate the name because it makes it sound so offensive. But it's just a dock that's mobile. They bring in, and then you got the vans pulling up. And these are vans that come to my house. My wife is a big user of Kroger. So this is the van that comes to your street, like an Amazon van or something like that, and it delivers the groceries. So it's the last mile. So this is really for the convenience of Anderson Township and the surrounding community. It's a great benefit because what we learned through COVID and post-COVID, and now we enjoy the convenience factor of having the groceries delivered right to your doorstep. So that's the basic use is a distribution facility. It's primarily vans, and like I said, on average, no more than 10 semi-truck deliveries in a 24-hour period. I can give you also the vans usually leave in two cycles. They usually leave around 6 a.m. at the site, and they leave again at about 1 p.m. to make the deliveries. And again, if you have any specific questions, Danny here can answer the questions on operations. And they call this the spoke. It's the last mile for those who are interested in this type of logistical distribution. I think it's fair to say staff has raised a number of questions. And I was going to just walk through them whether they're a question or a concern, and then however you want to frame up your conditions, and then I'm going to come back to my request for the variance on the landscaping. All right, so one of the conditions I think they're going to ask you to do is there's a landscaping area on the east line parallel with the, and if you have a photo, that'd be great if you could flip one up there, Eli. Okay, so if you look, there's arbor vitae planted along that east property line. If you think of the rear is the north, and then the heavily wooded area is the west, and then where the main office building, the larger building, that's to the south. So to that, on that east property line, there's like a little berm with trees there. I think one of the conditions they're going to request is that if there's any dead or dying trees, that there be substitution of new trees in that berm area. That's acceptable to us as a condition if you wish to impose that. We talked about the variance that we were going to ask for on the fence from 6 feet to 8 feet. That's no longer a request by us, so there's no variance issue. Also, there's apparently an absence of ADA vertical signage. You know, the typical handicap sign that you'll see, you know, you probably have them outside in front of your own building here. Of course, if they make a requirement that there has to be the appropriate ADA vertical signage, that's an acceptable condition. They asked the question, so it's not going to be an issue, about whether or not we're going to use a dumpster enclosure, and we're not. Our trash isn't that heavy. We're just going to do it typically like a resident, use trash cans, put them roadside, and it'll be picked up in ordinary delivery. So there's no dumpster issue. There's a requirement of a bike rack for 2 bicycle spaces, and Kroger would agree to that condition. They had asked.
Can I ask?
Yes, sir.
Have you already applied these conditions to them and agreed about the bike rack?
They've had questions and comments, again, throughout our
Okay, and this has all been,
process.
there's a document.
So far, this has been consistent with our
No,
conversation.
I'm just curious if it's a document trail, that's all I was asking.
Right.
Yeah,
There's an
okay.
email.
Okay.
Right, yeah. And if you want to waive these conditions, we're good with that, too.
So far, you're doing great.
I'm trying to do my best faith summary. We've had a number of conversations and
Yeah,
communications,
okay.
and please correct me if I do say something out of order. Again, it was meant to be a post-approval photometric landscaping. We have submitted, our request is that the photometric and the landscaping plan be accepted, subject to final approval by staff. Again, I want to just make sure I put a little caveat in there. On that landscaping plan, and I'll go through that, if you're looking at that photo up there, that's a good photo. On that northwest corner, do you have a laser or a cursor you can put over it for the board benefit of everyone? Oh, thank you. You must be a Boy Scout. Yeah. Am I using this right? Here, you got it. Oh. Am I doing it right? Here.
You're not. I think you're.
Is it working?
Nope. Are you back?
Oh, there it is. Okay. It's good enough, right? Okay. So northwest corner would be from like here along there. Thanks again, by the way. along this line. And we're asking that we not be required to spend what we consider unnecessary expense, because we already we'll have a lot of expense sort of bringing up some deferred maintenance on this site. And also we want to maximize our parking availability. If you look along this line, this is all natural conditions here. And there's nothing to screen from. There's no housing here or anything like that. So we're asking for relief to not have to put planting islands along this line here or in this area here. And then also here, this parcel back here, it's a very large parcel. There's a stormwater detention basin. That's actually owned through an affiliate company of what would be our landlord, which is the Evans property. Again, Dan Ott is present, and if his interests are, as we've discussed it, they don't particularly care or need, they have some kind of planting island in here, because this, again, natural conditions. This is a very large parcel, and there's a stormwater detention facility further back here. Again, there's no immediate housing in here. Now, we do show islands. I do want to let you know we made the effort, and we do show significant islands, planting islands in this area, and of course, this area here will be, they'll be very, it'll probably be enhanced, because I have the assurance, that this will not just be a situation of planting trees. I think they're going to come in and they'll edge it, weed it, and probably remulch it. So it should be a very attractive. So we are putting in substantial new landscaping, and we are enhancing existing landscaping. So I'm at the point of the photometric and landscaping plan. So that's what those plans will show you, and I'll come back specifically to the variance issue. Staff raised legitimate questions and about emissions and the like. In my 40 years of experience, those are fair. I want to characterize this, but that's sort of speculative. Our use is no more intensive, probably substantially less intensive than prior uses. So I do not have an expert tonight to testify about what our emissions are going to be from our vans, but I would ask the board to just take administrative notice that the historical uses were much more significant in terms of trucks, and also our proposed use of vans is everyday occurrence. And I'm hoping for the common sense of the board that I don't have to worry about bringing an expert witness in or go through that expense. And it was raised more in a speculative nature as opposed to a statement of fact. Regulated substances, we will have no regulated substances other than what you get is packaged materials, like if you have a little bottle of Windex, that technically becomes a regulated substance, probably if I put it in a 55-gallon drum. We're not doing anything like that. We're just sending out packaged goods that come off a truck that go into the delivery to Mr. Yoder's house if he's so inclined. So there's no regulated substances, so there's no concerns or EPA concerns there. Again, staff raises interesting question on vibration and shock. I am in an industrial zone. Again, I asked the board if they would just take administrative notice of the fact that vans and 10 truck deliveries are not anything extraordinary in a industrial zone, and certainly much less than the 75 heavy construction vehicles that were out there. In terms of, and they sort of wrapped that into a question about whether or not this would constitute a nuisance. To my knowledge, there's no case law around a nuisance of any kind of delivery facility or warehouse facility that operates in this manner. We talked about they raised the question about traffic, and again, we do not have a formal traffic report, but we know that our traffic, again, if you take administrative notice, it's a 6 a.m. and it's a 1 p.m. We're not even doing it, releasing trucks at peak hours. These are quiet hours, and again, if you, could you have that photo? Could you put that up? That shows the driveways. If you notice, can I have your? All right. Other way? There we go. Okay, so this is a private driveway that comes down here and goes out on the Mount Carmel Road. There's another private drive that goes along there that is servicing some residences back there, and also this, I think that's another Evans facility there. My point is simply this, and I hate to negotiate against myself. I was trying to think through what could be the issue, and the only issue I could think of was maybe stacking or something like that. But there's two substantial driveways that, you know, candidly, this is our driveway, and people have right to use it, but it's really our driveway coming down through here. And then there's this other road that goes out here, and I think there's even a road that goes back out there. So I can't even imagine a traffic issue going to Mount Carmel Road, because there is substantial distance between that intersection of that driveway with this other driveway that comes to Mount Carmel. And again, I ask you to just take administrative notice of the fact that you know, our traffic is nothing that is unusual for a warehouse distribution, and in fact, it's quite substantial, the linear distance of these driveways. It's not like it's just popping right out on the Mount Carmel Road. And then, just for purposes of full disclosure, the Department of the Hamilton County Soil and Water, the gentleman is here. Aaron, raise your hand. They have put a notice on the property relating to the fact that if there's new, or it probably is, it's not related to Kroger, but historical paving and the like may require stormwater upgrades. We are aware of that notice. Our engineer here, Patrick, is already in contact with their office, and as a result of the new development, we know that we would have to comply with whatever the jurisdictional authorities are requiring in terms of the detention facility, whether that's enlargement or it's the actual open ditch. These two gentlemen have already talked prior to the meeting. I don't know, do you intend to speak tonight, Aaron? Okay, only if you have questions. But I do want to assure you that they have already spoken, they're in contact, and we understand that a development obligation, traditional condition, compliance with stormwater regulations, this notice of violation is known to us. I would like to think it will become a moot point once we do the new development. All right, so that's pretty much the application. I want to sum it up on the variance side, but I also want to give you a chance to ask any questions. Do you have any specific questions right now? Not to tell you how to run your meeting, but do you have any specific questions maybe on operations or anything like that? Because I sort of have finished that portion of my presentation.
On the operations side, I know you said 10 trucks per 24 hours, but I don't remember hearing how many vans.
Right.
I imagine that may vary with the number of customers needed, but do you have a target? Do you have an estimate?
Sure. Do I need to introduce myself?
Please.
Okay.
Name and
Yep.
address.
Daniel Veach, 29 or 4929 Floral Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45212. Work with the Kroger Company. So what we are looking at from a van dispatch is roughly, call it 70 to 100 routes per day. So we'll have anywhere from 70 to 100 vans exiting the site throughout a 24-hour period.
Is that consistent with the number you're currently running in Anderson Township?
Yeah, so, and just for some clarity there, so this operation is really like a true, we've called it a distribution. It's a cross-docking facility where we bring trucks, they come into the site, they already have customer orders picked out of the facility up in Monroe. They then take the customer orders within totes, bagged in groceries. So we're not bagging anything, or we're not, doing any type of picking on site. But those those racks are then just cross-loaded into the delivery vans and then sent out at that point.
What kind of
And
trucks?
I had, go ahead, go ahead.
So what kind of trucks are they that they're bringing in the?
So coming into the site, they're going to be 53-foot trailers that come in. They unload in the Dockzilla, the Moby Docks is what we call them. But it's purely just a cross-docking facility. And then it's basically 9 vans worth of groceries are cross-loaded into 9 vans at that point.
Typically, at Dockzilla, there's a service agent. Your service agent is going to be the semis, I would assume, or correct? The semis will pull up to the Dockzilla area, dump into there, and it'll split out
Yes.
to the vans. Now, I didn't see anything as far as a shelter over the area on any of the drawings. Is it strictly a slab-on-grade operation for now?
Yes.
Okay.
Engineer-wise.
Engineer
Yeah.
person. Make sure, introduce yourself.
course.
please.
Patrick Garrett, Dunn Blythe, 100 Trade Street, Lexington, Kentucky, 40511. The mobile dock unit actually is its own enclosure. So yes, there is a slab on grade prepared, but the mobile dock unit will sit on top of that. So as they unload, it will be enclosed and transitioned out to the van.
Okay, all right, now I understand it a little better. Thank you.
While you're here, President, I made a statement, which you can correct if I said it incorrectly. The release time are primarily two times in the day. One is 6 o'clock, is that correct?
Yeah, so I did get confirmation today. So the earliest outbound that we're going to see with the vans is 5 a.m. And so we have 2 route dispatches per day. One is at a.m., one's a p.m., depending on customer order request. So we are looking at 5 a.m. as the earliest, and then we're looking at about a 1 to 2 p.m. dispatch in the p.m. side, with the last van arriving back to site, call it 10 p.m.
And again, I know you're knowledgeable zoning, land use people. Those are not peak hours, considered peak hours for purposes of truck movement or vehicular movement. With your blessing, can I move to the specific? Okay. On the, if you could, pull up that plan that had showed the landscaping in that northwest corner. Okay. Now we have a revised plan, and sorry to do this. I think that's, oh, I can hold that down, right? Okay. Well, that's the area. This is, if you can see the red, that's the west. You don't see the photo, but that's all vegetation along there. And then this area here, there's a significant parcel behind us that's owned by Evans, which is an affiliate of our landlord. And that's all natural too. It's that area there that I'm asking for the variance. And the reason simply is, and we are, by the way, we are putting in these islands here. And then this whole area where the red is, that's going to be enhanced also along that east line. You know, again, I struggle with the practical difficulties test because it's got some factors that just, you know, don't relate to really the practical hardship. What we're really asking for is just common sense. If the purpose is for screening, the idea is that there's really no benefit there to the screening purpose. And so I've always asked government, if there's no purpose being served, please don't add additional costs to land development, because we will have significant land upgrades, and we also would like to maintain as many parking spaces and also have a clear vehicular movement of the vans in and out of those spaces. If you've ever been up to the Kenwood Town Center, people love it. Okay, I remember it as a kid when it was the Kenwood Shopping Center, but they came in and put all those islands in, and if you've ever had to maneuver around the Kenwood Town Center around Christmas time, it's a nightmare. And it really was a nightmare created by the parking islands they put in there. This is obviously not a nightmare. I'm just asking for common sense result. So in terms of the variance standard, will the property in question yield a reasonable return? It will yield a reasonable return. The point is that we just don't want to expend unnecessary funds that we could use towards operation. Is the variance substantial? No, I don't think it is in relation to the entire site and also the vegetation that already exists. Will the essential character of the neighborhood be altered? Well, I don't think so. It's an industrial zone, and obviously all the other prior uses didn't have to comply with this type of a landscaping requirement. Would the variance adversely affect delivery of government services? No. In fact, if you have more, you got to use more water to water those plants. It's probably more of a drain that way. Did the property owner purchase the property with knowledge of the zoning restrictions? I would gather to say no, because the prior uses never had to put in the islands. So I'm the new guy in, and I'm being told I got to put all these islands in, and we're glad to put in as many that make sense to us. Can the property owner's predicament be obviated through some other method? No, because it's sort of like you either put it in or you don't. And so there's no other solution to this other than the request that we don't have to put it in. I think the big one here is the spirit and intent behind the requirement would be observed and justice done. I think common sense, and it's a world where we are looking for common sense, is that this could be a very nice development, and it'll bring a lot of solutions to some deferred maintenance items. So overall, holistically, it's a very good project, we believe. It mitigates probably other concerns about traffic and emissions because of the nature of our vehicles versus past vehicles. It's an opportunity to enhance the aesthetic because we are going to be doing significant landscaping here. So I would say that, and I think staff actually tried to agree with my position on the last point about spirit and justice, that I don't think there's any concern about your zoning code being violated or some land use here that is obnoxious. In fact, I think, again, the overall project is going to be a very nice benefit or addition to the community. With that said, if you would respectfully approve the certificate for a conditional use and also grant the variance on the one variance on the zoning consistent with the site plan I submitted tonight.
Quick question for you. You mentioned the islands.
Yes.
Sort of, maybe it's more of a question for you as a designer without me digging through the plans. Are those poured in place islands? Are they just marked on the asphalt? Are they rolled curbs?
They will be actual concrete placed curbs. Yeah, and in the
Poured in
there is
place.
actually a detail there. It'll be a soldier curb.
Okay.
It's actually that second detail down.
All right,
on this
thank
sheet.
you.
Oh, I forgot one last little footnote. I'll quit. Stop. I know the conditions that we've agreed to, and hopefully we're consistent on it. The only concern I've got is that we are trying to open by February 1st, and I know realistically that the landscaping, whether I would just ask if you could put the two words behind it, landscaping condition, weather permitting, because knowing what the weather could be like in February, I don't think we're going to be planting anything in February, and it could be as late as April. So I would ask that if you make that a condition to our occupancy certificate, please give us the latitude with the words weather permitting, only as to the landscaping condition. As far as the bike rack and fencing and enhancement of that area up there, I think we're fine.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Sorry to spend so much time.
I do have one more question for you. How do I put this? Your landlord, I think we're going to hear from a lot of folks about your landlord.
Sure.
Which is not you. I grant that. When we grant variances, they run with the land.
Right.
And I suspect some of your neighbors are going to be concerned that we grant Kroger a variance. Kroger uses this for a couple of years and maybe is a pretty good neighbor, but then they're left with, someone else in there and a landlord that they don't trust, whether rightly or wrongly. Can you speak to that at all? Are there any assurances you can give them and us about that sort of
Well,
thing?
I only want you to grant the variance if it makes land use sense. I don't want you to grant it for Kroger's benefit or against the Evans family. I want you to look at it and say, is our request meet the spirit of a variance request where I've got the west line is completely uninhabited, natural conditions. The property to the north is the landlord's property. I just want you to grant it. And so if somebody comes up and says, you didn't grant it for Kroger, you didn't grant it against the Evans, you granted it because my presentation hopefully made sense to say there's no one's land use, there's no adverse land use impact as a result of granting the variance.
Sorry.
I think we've answered this in the past. When we grant a variance, supposedly it's a
Perpetuity?
but can we put a condition on it?
Yeah, the standard language is that a variance runs with the land, such that a successor in interest would inherit that variance. But if the board feels it's necessary to add a condition that the variance shall expire upon termination of the applicant's use on the property, you could do such a thing.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Anyone else would have to come back in if they want to use the same condition and apply again, right?
Correct. You could legally attach a condition such as that.
And I can tell you, we're evidence of that, what his statement is, because arguably, we're a similar industrial use that is less than probably what was on the site, but we submitted to the jurisdiction of Anderson Township because we respect your code and what your staff required. Thank you. Yes, sir.
As far as the cross-docking is concerned, will there be any inventory maintained on property, or will it just be coming and going?
No.
Reintroduce yourself, just by name.
Yep. Daniel Beach. There will be no inventory on site,
So
strictly
really
cross-docking.
just a vacant property as far as things moving around and
Correct.
coming and going?
Right.
Correct.
And just to further answer, we will use the office building for support.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
it's not inventory.
I did have a follow-up question too. What's the service area for this facility?
Service area?
Yeah, what?
So
geographically, how-
Anderson Township, this area in general has been identified as one of the heat map zones. So we're not extending delivery further out east. We're not crossing into Kentucky. So this will probably be, call it east of 275 up to the Loveland area, as far south as the river, and as far east as, I'm going to say, Bethel, probably. But yeah, we're not expanding the territory, and I would say as far west as, call it 71. So that's kind of the catchment area, but Anderson has been identified as one of those heat zones for a lot of the deliveries that come out of Monroe.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board? Mr. Shekels?
Yeah. Sort of different one. So currently, are they just pulling everything out of the store on an individual basis?
No, so everything that we're talking about here comes out of the Monroe Fulfillment Center.
Even the current deliveries?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, everything comes out of, so there's some in-store pickup that comes from the Monroe facility,
Yeah.
but all the delivery that takes place, so anytime you guys see vans, traversing the neighborhoods, they're all coming out of the Monroe Fulfillment Center.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else wish to speak in favor of this appeal? Sir, please state your name, address, and present your...
Yes, my name is Dan Utt. I'm an attorney with Keating, Miffing, and Cleecamp, 1 East 4th Street, Suite 1400, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45202. I'm here on behalf of the landlord, and thanks for hearing the case. And if you could go back to the first photo, the aerial that shows the site, I think that's kind of helpful too. So we talked about the area surrounding the property. And Mr. Evans and his companies own the residential area to the right or to the east of the access easement area. So he owns that property. He owns the property to the north there, and he owns the property to the east there. And so we were talking about landscaping in the area of the northwest corner of the site. That's pretty vegetated with natural vegetation and trees today. In fact, I drove by the facility before I came tonight, and I missed the drive to the facility. I've been there many times, but you can't see the facility from Mount Carmel Road, so it's pretty secluded in terms of buffered from Mount Carmel. And so we think the existing natural vegetation provides a really superior buffer versus adding additional landscaping in the northwest corner. On the east side of the property where the existing mound and trees are situated, so there's a total of 36 trees there. 5 deciduous, and the rest are a combination of Norfolk pines, blue spruces, a few arborvitae, and some white pines. So all those trees are living today. They're doing nicely. They're going to get bigger. As part of the landlord improvements to the site, we're going to add the 6-foot fence to enclose the facility for security purposes, and we're going to clean up the mound and remulch it and edge it, and it'll look professionally done like other facilities that he has in the area. They're landscapers. They know that part of the business really well. So they're going to take care of cleaning that up. And I was just surprised today, being out at the site, how clean and frankly first class that it looks compared to some of the prior uses when Blue Chip Paving was there. There were a lot of heavy vehicles, a lot of vehicle traffic, and then I think Scott's owned the facility before Blue Chip, and they actually had a larger operation, and it was a pretty messy operation to compare to what it's been kind of repurposed for in terms of a true distribution facility that will support a neighborhood business that's going to provide delivery service to residents, et cetera. So there was talk about the paving of the gravel lot, and with due respect, I'm not sure that we actually understood, or the owner understood, that paving the existing hard-packed gravel on the site required a zoning certificate. We're happy to submit a zoning certificate request for the paving, but we think the paving is a dramatic improvement of the site in terms of dust control and simply making the site look well kept. And if there's additional stormwater runoff associated with the paving versus the existing or the pre-existing hard-packed area that requires a modification to the stormwater management plan, we're going to work with Kroger's engineer to submit that to Hamilton County to comply with that. Fortunately, the property to the north is owned by one of Mr. Evans' companies, and there's an existing stormwater detention facility on that property that is well sized to handle the current facility. And if there's additional stormwater runoff requirements associated with the paving, it's certainly large enough to accommodate that, and we'll make the necessary modifications to make that compliant. What else can I offer here? In terms of access, I agree with what Mr. Trainer said about staging of vehicles. That's a private access drive. We have rights to use it. Others have rights to use it. But it's not the primary means of access to Mount Carmel for the residences further in the back, one of which is Mr. Evans' son, who lives in the area. And we don't think that that's going to affect their ability to use that access drive and to safely access Mount Carmel. There's good visibility at the intersection of that access easement and Mount Carmel Road. There's another industrial facility across the street that has the same curb cut access in that area. And Mount Carmel's a well-maintained road that's very wide, and I think will accommodate their traffic really adequately. And in terms of intensity of use, I know there was discussion about that. We think with the types of deliveries and the timing of those deliveries, it's going to be a less intensive use than some of the prior uses. And from an emission standpoint, I think Kroger is probably moving to electric vehicle vans in addition to the gas and propane powered. So, I mean, they're a green oriented company, and I'm sure that the emissions will decrease over time versus what has occurred in the past. So if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to address them. We understand that the property is currently zoned to permit an industrial use, light industrial distribution facility. We think the variances, I think there's two, one on landscaping, and is there another variance besides landscaping? Just the landscaping requirement, right? And if there's concern about that running with the land versus to this specific use, we're happy to accept that condition that limits it to Kroger's use, because if Kroger isn't here long-term and we have to repurpose the use of the facility for another industrial or light industrial use, there's probably going to be a zoning certificate process and evaluation of that use compared to what the current zoning allows. So any questions, I'm happy to address those. I mean, if there are concerns from residents, I mean, this is a site-specific request submitted on behalf of a company that's not affiliated with the landlord. Landlord's going to have a lease agreement in place with Kroger, and we'll fulfill our obligations as a landlord under that lease and Anderson Township's requirements as it pertains to use and operation of this site.
Just to clarify, there is no lease currently executed?
It's in the final stages of being executed.
Okay, what would be the
Becau-
length?
Well, the condition is this special use approval. So once this is approved, the lease is going to be signed in a matter of weeks.
What would be the length of the lease?
Am I at liberty to disclose that?
What was the question?
Length of the lease. It's a 5-year lease with renewal options.
I was going to say no, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't say that.
Yes. It's okay. Yeah. I mean, it's going to, we expect it with the investment they're making, it's going to be a long-term lease.
I will just add, because when you're 5 years, I want to let you have something to say here, so come on up. Please introduce yourself.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
You too. Akiva Freeman, real estate representative for the Kroger Co. 1014 Vine Street, 45202.
And feel free to say whatever you want to say about you're excited to be here, serving the neighborhood, and like as Dan said, because you are Kroger, you're hoping to be, it's a long-term relationship. Whatever you want to say.
Yeah, no. The investment that we're going to make into this site is pretty significant, right? And so we want to make certain that we have the support of the township, and we want to be good neighbors, and that's our expectation. But we are certainly excited. I think Danny mentioned the catchment area that we'll be able to service from this location is main and main for us. And so, again, excited about being here and expect to be really great neighbors here in Anderson Township.
Thank you.
Anything else with respect to the property owner?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this appeal? Seeing none, does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Sir in the back over there. Please step forward, state your name, address, and any affiliation with the case.
My name is Jack Gordon. I live at 4302 Mount Carmel Road, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45244. I own the property just behind the access road. I've got the closest, I think, non-commercial property to this site. Bickle Road, which comes off of Mount Carmel Road and which the Kroger will have to use to access their property, is also my driveway. I have several concerns. I have one general concern of access to this property. I'm actually surprised Kroger would pick this. You cannot take semis either direction on Mount Carmel Road. You go one way and you hit a very low trestle, and semis won't go under it. And the other way on Mount Carmel Road, you're going up that windy road, and it's illegal to take the trucks up there. The only way into the facility is Broadwell Road, which dumps onto Round Bottom Road. You go one way on Round Bottom Road, and it's a very windy, narrow road. And I drive that road quite often. And frankly, semis are a problem on that road because they don't stay on their side of the lane. They can't, going around those curves. You go the other way on Mount Carmel Road, on Round Bottom Road, and you end up in Newtown, which is already a choke point for lots and lots of trucks in the area. So there's going to be access problems getting in and out of the facility for these big trucks. There is a concern that I have, a more specific concern about about Bickle Road. Trucks coming in and out of that, and he's talking 10 semis, but he's also talking 100 vans coming into my driveway every day is a problem. We had that once before when Mr. Evans was, the property that's at the top of that picture that they were showing is got all those red barns. He created a unpermitted industrial park up there, filled it with 100 and some cars and trucks going in every day. And it was a major problem for the residents along Bickle Road. It will be again, trying to get in and out. Not to mention that the guy who originally built that building on this facility and put his business in there destroyed our mailboxes half a dozen times trying to get these big trucks to turn into Bickle Road, because all of our mailboxes are lined up right by Mount Carmel Road on Bickle Road, because the post office won't let us have mailboxes actually at our houses. So it's going to be a problem for the people who live up there for sure. Another concern I have is that according to staff report, Kroger says Kroger's operations will be primarily indoors. That just doesn't sound true to me, because the purpose of the facility is to take these big trucks in and put them in these loading docks and then take the vans out. That's going to be the outside use. The indoor stuff is paperwork, but the main use of the facility is going to be outdoors, which means that we're going to have trucks backing up to get into these loading docks. And I heard tonight that that's going to start at 5 a.m. Well, 5 a.m., I don't know about you guys, but I'm still asleep. And these trucks, when they back up, have alarms on them. That area we're talking about is not just a flat area. It's a bowl. It used to be a gravel pit. So the Bickle Road is actually like 20 feet above the parking lot. And it acts like like a music facility. I mean, when you have noises going on in that bowl, it just goes right up the hill, right up Pepper Ridge, which is where all of the people who live along there live. So it will be a very noisy area for us at 5 a.m. in the morning, it sounds like. Let's talk about the unpermitted paving of the parking lot. I mean, nobody that I've ever met knows less about wastewater management than Mr. Evans. And I know that from experience, because when he put all those barns up there, he paved all of that area, and all of the water from that area, it runs down along a ditch and across my property and threatens to wash out the culvert into my driveway all the time when there's major rains. And in fact, the parking lot does flood when it rains. And in fact, when I came down my driveway tonight, I looked over there, and there's standing water on that parking lot today. And we didn't get that much rain. So that's going to be a problem. Finally, I'd like to point out that, the staff report also talks about the activity will probably not have an adverse effect on the property values. And I would agree with that, but I would only agree with that because Mr. Evans's industrial park has already destroyed our property values. I mean, mine's down 30%, and one of my neighbors is 50%. Another one is 35% since he put that industrial park up there. This isn't going to take it down any further. But certainly it's not going to, as the staff report talked about, have a beneficial effect. The only beneficial effect it'll have is on other Evans properties that are commercial in that area. So I think I've talked enough. I think it's a bad idea to put a facility in there. We're going to have not just noise, but light pollution when they start trying to light the facility. And I don't see that this is a proper place for them to put it. I have no idea why they couldn't find a better way to do this than a road that you can't even go down. Mount Carmel Road's not usable for them, except a small section to Broadwell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question?
Where do you live?
If you go back to the picture, the one you've been showing all night, okay, there. If you go straight up, you see all the red barns. If you go this way, well, right there where the thing is now is my land. If you go this way to the right, that's my land. Keep going, keep going. If you go up now, right about there's my house. and you go down Bickle Road, and as Bickle Road turns and goes along the top of that property, my driveway then cuts off and keeps going east. And I live in a little place up there.
How long have you lived there?
27 years.
Was it pretty industrialized at that time?
No, in fact, it's not really. In your long-term plan, which I actually was on a committee that dealt with a few years ago, you know, this is supposed to eventually be a multi-use area. It's not just an industrial area. But certainly I agree that the property that they're talking about is light industry. So yeah, these were all trees. I mean, that was a gravel pit, and that whole hillside where you see those barns was wooded. Evans depopulated all of that without any kind of permits. Built the barns with no permits. Has no occupancy permit today for any of the barns. The county is after him because he's not supposed to be using the barns and he can't handle the wastewater. When he put all those barns in, he put a detention pond up where that highest barn is on the right. So his detention pond for water is not on the lowest corner of the property. So it's doing absolutely no good. It's above all of that asphalt that was poured. So, you know, I can just tell you, you know, if you do this, make sure you tighten it up as much as you can. I mean, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here because you all have spent a lot of legal money dealing with Mr. Evans's many myriad schemes that he's had over the years, and you'll spend a lot more. I wouldn't give him a variance. It'll come back to bite you. I guarantee it.
Any further questions from the board? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do we want to allow rebuttals? Yes.
Let's get all the testimony first.
Yeah, we'll allow rebuttal later, sir. Sir, there with the hat, do you want to please step forward, state your name, address, and affiliation with the case?
Tom Sill, 3367 Merwin 10 Mile Road, New Richmond, Ohio 45157. But being affiliated with the area, I own the property also at the corner of Mount Carmel, Round Bottom Road, which I've been there since 1986, which is very close to 30 years. And to a certain extent, we have not reviewed many of the potential problems that Kroger's will be privy to. Excuse me. What I mean by that is obviously it's going to be increased traffic tenfold. Small vehicles, large vehicles now. Was the semis, one semi 10 trips or 10 trips period for the semis? And of course, I'm quite aware of the fact that Kroger is very knowledgeable of the railroad trestle on Madison Road, because that's been run into several times, as is the one on Mount Carmel Road several times. And very quickly, I might point out that Mount Carmel Road, from one end to the other end, is a 5-ton limit road, although it's pretty much ignored from Round Bottom Road all the way up to Broadwell. That's something that we need to consider for the future. But like I say, Kroger has a lot of knowledge of the railroad trestle. Rather than increase the values, I think it's going to be a decrease in the values of the property down there, mainly because of the congestion that's going to be taking place with all of the traffic coming and going. They talked about coming from Monroe. I assume that's Monroe, Ohio. So they're going to be, as the gentleman stated, they're going to be dealing with Round Bottom Road out of Milford or Route 32 out of Newtown. And that's going to be a fiasco, as it is already in that particular area. I try to remember, I got almost 30 years of watching traffic. I go down there, I'm there 8 to 18 hours every day for almost the last 30 years. So I see all of it. Especially now that Centco's closed, it'd be unbelievable how many cars would be released from Centco going up to the top of the hill and stopping for school buses and et cetera, let alone the stop sign at Moran, kind of a thing. But the other one that wasn't mentioned yet was the dirt that when Evans is working his opposite here on the east side, west side of Mount Carmel Road, there is an unbelievable amount of dust that comes up over top the trees and lands right on my property or goes all the way over into Terrace Park, even with all the trees that they have. It's cloudy. You can't really see through there. And if Evan gets his permission to, I'm speculating, Evans gets his permission to do the mining over on the east side, right there by Blue Chip, that's really going to be brutal for Kroger's. And let's see, I think that's about all, but I think it's going to be a 5-year plan, is what I think. So, but that's just my opinion, and I appreciate your time and Kroger's time. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Please step forward, sir, in the green shirt. Please state your name, address, and any affiliation.
Good evening. Matthew Greenberg. I live at 4040 Mount Carmel Road, which is just north of Broadwell, and I'm not affiliated with any parties here.
Other than your residence?
Residents, yes. So I just want to focus in on the railroad trestle, low trestle that was already pointed out by the last speaker, and perhaps by Jack Gordon as well, although I was having difficulty hearing him. It's not just that it's low, but it is a one-lane road through underneath that trestle, and there's yielding both ways. And I have great concerns for the added traffic with this proposal that I hope would be addressed. And I want to point to item 5 in the findings of this appeals board regarding how it would impact traffic in the area, which I think would be us. There's been discussion about the private road that accesses Mount Carmel Road, but in fact, all of the vehicles coming out of this facility are going to go onto Mount Carmel Road, and you can go north or south. Going north, it's under the trestle and then to Round Bottom Road. If I understand the proposal here, they're creating parking for about 168 employees, as well as for at least 200 vans. And it's not clear whether there's shifts of employees coming in and out of there, but the vehicles passing under that railroad trestle, having to yield back and forth, I fear will create a lot of risk of accidents and resulting slowdowns in traffic that is different than what's going on now on Round Bottom Road. There is a lot of heavy truck traffic on Mount Carmel Road, that does pass under the trestle, but it's nothing like I don't believe it's anything like the several hundred potential private cars going back and forth for employees to this proposed facility, not to mention the vans. So I would hope that this board would take it under consideration that something probably would have to be done about controlling the traffic under that railroad trestle. So that's just south of Round Bottom Road on Mount Carmel Road, and the residence where I live is about a half mile south of that. So thank you.
Any questions from the board?
No, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please step forward, ma'am. state your name, address, and any affiliation. Were you sworn in, ma'am?
Yeah, I made sure this
Thank you.
time. All right, so my name is Mary Carroll. My last name is Schimpf, and I've lived here since 1971 at 3851, 3861 Mount Carmel Road. Is that enough?
Yes.
All right, so the last time I spoke to you guys, this group, was they needed to widen the road so that like the school bus and the fire truck didn't hit each other, and then, you know, that happened for that school down the street. So now, I really just came here for selfish reasons because when I sit outside at night, I just wanted to know, is there gonna be a time when they stop making backup beeping noises? And like, how bright are the lights gonna be so at nighttime? That was what I wanted you guys to think about. But then while I was sitting here just listening to everybody, okay, so the guy with the fence on the east side, like lots of deer, that's the part where I always like have to really be careful going up Mount Carmel Road. And they're gonna put a fence there, so I don't know if that's gonna cause a problem. And then I was thinking about the 10-speed guys that ride on their bikes, like on the weekends and stuff, all up and down Round Bottom. So that road is still very small. And then the kayakers that have to cross that road, I don't know, I keep saying that road. Do I have to be more specific?
I know what you mean. Yeah, we know what you mean.
Okay, great. So, remember the kid that got hurt at, killed, on, you know, down where UDF is and Clough and, like, down that way? Because there wasn't any sidewalks or crossing stations or whatever. So, people are gonna be trying to cross. And that was my point. So, it was just 3 points. It was the light, the noise for me, and then the safety for the kayakers and the bikers. And then I added the fence because of the deer. I don't know how that's gonna affect, you know. But those guys are right about the traffic patterns. So, as a kid, well, the policemen are stopping a lot of the semis coming down the hill. I live on the S-curve. But, even recently, like, some semis get through, and they go right over, like, way over the line. Like, if a car's coming up right at that S-curve. But when I was a kid, the semis would turn over at the bottom of the hill. So, I don't know. That's true about the semis. And, the trestle, I've seen, like a Coca-Cola truck get stuck underneath there. And, let's see. And, yeah, that is just like one coming this way, one going that way. And then, when I was reading this thing about the buses. So if I want to take a bus, I can only make it to Beachmont Mall, and that's where it ends. And then I got an Uber to get from there to home. So are they really? I mean, we don't even have sidewalks since 19. Huh?
School buses.
No. Oh, it's public transport. Public transport, right there. So I didn't know what that meant. Are they planning on having? These are how people are gonna get to and from work with like a real big bus? I mean, right now, it doesn't come out that far. So I just wondered if that was really gonna happen. I don't
Sorry,
know.
can you point me to what you're referring to with the public transport reference? I'm not sure.
It's the number 7.
It's in the last line. It's relating to,
Consideration of enhancements, public transit facilities, including bus shelters.
So I understand.
Anyways, so that's pretty much it. So, yeah, just wanted to say something now, so later you guys think I didn't care.
if I may, board, your question, was that related to like streetlights in the Mount Carmel area?
Street light.
Your first question.
Oh, okay, so lights, like ambient lights, like I can see where the new fields are.
Okay.
And they are so bright. But then some of the other old lights, like down Broadwell, not so bright. So I wonder, like, is there something where you guys give permission for lights to be certain brightness or only kind of bright?
Sure. So our regulations state what the foot candles, which is how you measure light, have to be at property lines.
Oh, cool.
As part of our conversations with Kroger, We just stated that it needs to be compliant with our minimums in our zoning resolution.
Oh, cool. And then what about like the backing up noises? Like, are they gonna be able to like make beeping noises all night long? Like, you know how the brick people, sometimes they make that like grindy noise and,
I would refer that to Kroger's expertise as far as their backing up. I would assume that's a safety feature, just to, again, when you're using a large vehicle.
yeah, 'cause he's
But I'll
right.
let Kroger speak to that.
It does go right up the hill. That's it. But I have lived there my whole life.
And then in reference for the board's sake, Article 7 is just more or less, it's offering whatever applicant, for whatever conditional use, if they were saying that if they're going to make specific enhancements, that might help. Similar to how zoning commission works, where if you're going to request something, what are you offering in return? So that's not necessarily saying that specifically anything in there is going to happen. That's just saying if you were requesting a variance or something, is there anything that you're offering in return? Is more or less, I think.
Yeah.
Is that being
That's default language from our.
correct? Yeah, that's just default language.
Yeah. Because back in the day, he's right about Simcoe. Like, you just could not get out onto Mount Carmel Hill. Like, you had to, like, you learned real fast how to turn, you know, because they let out forever.
Any
That's
questions,
it.
further questions from the board? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
No. Okay. Well, it used to be really great down there. It was really quiet. You could ride your bike, but not so much anymore.
Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Sir, back there in the gray shirt. Please step forward, state your name, address, and any affiliation.
Jason Gordon, 4340 Mount Carmel Road, Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a resident that lives down Bickle Lane, down the gravel driveway all the way toward the back. I love Kroger. They get like half of my paycheck these days. I'm all about home delivery. That's great. I just hope that they did their due diligence when they're trying to lease property from a convicted felon, and talk to some of the other people that have leased from him in the past. It's not good news. Regardless, I failed to understand. If we could look at one of the images where the gravel drive, where the property that still shows the gravel around it. So when Mr. Evans bought the property, the original owner had a small paving business. He built a nice facility. It's got a septic system, and he only utilized what was paved there. When Mr. Evans purchased the property, he came in and expanded its use illegally by putting asphalt millings that covered the entire acreage. That's against the township zoning resolution to have anything that's not paved, but he did it anyway because that's who Mr. Evans is. And he had an opportunity to rent to Kroger once KS Energy left, and he came in and he paved the whole lot without talking to anybody about doing it. Again, didn't follow any of the township zoning resolutions, and now there's this paved monstrosity that I drive past every day. I took a couple of notes, so bear with me as I go through some of these things. The lights on the existing building don't have any shades or anything on them to direct the light flow, and they just shine up. Again, the residents live up on the hill, and there's a half a dozen of us with nice homes. And I get that this is an industrial area in name, but it's not developed to be anything. There's no sewer, there's no water. Me and my neighbors all use well. We have well water. So if there's something that happens on this site that they don't want to report, that's going to affect all of us in a bad way. I think we've beat the ingress and egress to the property to death with round bottom, with the trestle at the end of Mount Carmel Road. And then the hill coming down Mount Carmel Road to access the property from the south. I mean, I've watched people get hit by tractor trailers on that road. It's no joke. And what you're giving Kroger the opportunity to do 10 times a day is to injure somebody or to cause a severe traffic delay at that railroad bridge 10 times every single day. And how that would impact my life and that of my neighbors and anybody else that traverses Mount Carmel Road, which is a heavily trafficked road. That's bad news for residents, people that work down there, and the rest of the township. let's see. Hours of operation, quiet hours. You know, I think that their hours at 5 and 6 a.m. are going to coincide with a shift change at Senco. So you're going to have several hundred vehicles on that road at the same time. In addition, it coincides with the time that the bus comes to get my kids in the morning. So I'll have my kids standing at the end of the road there on Bickle Lane with 100 vans and up to 10 trucks coming and going while they're standing out there. That doesn't sound good for me or for my children. So again, everything up the hill at the end of Bickle Lane is residential on the comprehensive plan. And how a tractor trailer distribution facility is going to help increase my property value, I don't understand it. If any of you were to live there and had your kids going to school and had a shared driveway with a distribution center, would that increase your property value in some way? I don't know if it would. Quiet hours, we talked that. Traffic, we talked that. Mount Carmel Road is a brand new, fresh paved road. It's amazing. It's going to be a shame to see it get destroyed. But Round Bottom in Anderson Township is terrible. Not only are the large tractor trailers and other Evans trucks left of center all the time, but the road is not flat, and they're just everywhere on that road. And a cyclist, it's a scenic bike route, so and cyclists have died on that road already. So we're giving them an opportunity to kill somebody else. No permits. Yeah, I mean, hundreds of trucks a day on my driveway. That just sounds amazing to me. I appreciate your time. Got questions for me?
Questions from the board?
So where do you exactly live in there?
Yeah, great question. I live right next to Evans's illegal industrial park, so I've been fighting that for a number of years now. Just another example of something that he just does without
the illegal?
All those red buildings up there.
Okay.
He built those as agricultural buildings with no permits, and then proceeded to fill them with different businesses. There was a concrete sawing company. There was a auto mechanic. There was there was a number of businesses being run out of those agricultural buildings. So the part that has kind of the most trees there next to the grassy field, that's me. And so ever since he started his illegal endeavors up there, I just take a piece of my paycheck and plant a new tree every few weeks, just to try to farther isolate myself. But as you can see, everybody's up on it's a raised, that's sunken in the ground from being a gravel pit. So all of the sound echoes up, all of the light is going to escape the property, all of the dust it's already coming across from the mine site. But this, I mean, dust, light, traffic, I don't want it next to my house. Do you want it next to yours? I doubt it.
Any further questions from the board?
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Seeing none, does the appellant wish to rebut any testimony?
First of all, I respect anybody that came up in opposition. But as a matter of law, I just want to point out that, first of all, traffic cannot be a basis for denial of a zoning permit. But more importantly, what I was hearing about traffic, and I was trying to locate their residences in my head, and I don't even know if this picture frame is large enough to, can you expand that out? Because I think there's some confusion as to when they say my driveway, like we're using their driveway. I'm trying to capture what that concept is, because if, I don't need your red pen, but if you can, Eli, hit like where that access point is onto the property of Evans, which is, as I understand it, is our driveway. But it's used by an easement if they wish, because apparently these owners, I think, have multiple ways to go out of this neighborhood, because they live back, they keep referencing that red industrial facility. And could you put the red dot right on that access point? No, because I'm not even going up that far right now. I'm just talking about our access point right there. Yeah, and then, so from an operations side, can you come up? Again, I don't want to make light of their comments, but I do want to be factually accurate. So that driveway sits on Evans' property, and we're thinking, and you correct me, okay, we're coming down that driveway. Eli, can you show it going like south? Okay, come south. Oh, new slide, all right. Come south, all right. That ties into maybe what they're referring to as their driveway, but there's do you have a photo that, I had actually given a photo, if you got the A, B, and C's? Okay, there we go. All right, that's good. Okay, so we're coming south, and then we're going right onto that little driveway there, common driveway or whatever that is, to Mount Carmel. So I'm sensing their properties are much further to the east or to the north. And I'm trying to grasp how we're going to be, bottlenecking with them, because they're back on streets that aren't even on this map. No, that's fine. I heard your presentation. But no, I'm not being curt with you. I heard your presentation.
Hold on. No one from the crowd should address anyone, and the speaker should only address the board.
So I'm just trying to isolate, because I think they're creating an impression as if we're going back into their neighborhoods, like we're driving north and we're going to go east. And that's what I heard. So as the appellant, I'm just saying, I want the board to recognize we're not doing anything more than what has been used at that site has been for. And the photo that I submitted, A, B, and C, there's a photo that's very graphic, and I wish we could put it up there. There are 75 parked heavy industrial vehicles that were on site at some point in time using that. So we're definitely not doing something more than. I feel very comfortable in that. And we're certainly not backing into this residential area, which I'm sure is very nice, and it's behind the red buildings that are shown on that film. We're circulating in that little area coming right down the Mount Carmel. That's the driving pattern we're going to speak to. And honestly, I can't speak to the trestle issue. I don't have any factual knowledge about the trestle or anything like that. But I would say, Dan, for the record, is that traffic pattern I'm trying to describe, that is the Kroger traffic pattern that's anticipated to go in and out on that short distance of the driveway and then come back down out to Mount Carmel. Right. It's not to go north or go east into these people's neighborhoods. Correct. That's all I got to say. And again, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Richard, if I may. So looking at this slide, there's the road that runs along what we call the southern edge of the property there.
Right.
Mount Carmel's on the left, and there's that road along the southern edge. The first speaker, his driveway is just off screen to the right on that road.
And could you put a red dot on it, just in fairness to the speaker, so I don't want to get it incorrectly.
Yeah, so his driveway is right about there.
Right.
So he would access it through that road along the southern edge of the property.
Yes.
Okay. The last guy, or maybe second to last guy, who talked about his kids, his driveway is kind of up about there.
Right.
So I think what they're saying is, regardless of whether they use the access road that runs through the parcel outlined in red,
right,
there's this strip of, I forget the name of it, Bickle Road. Yeah, exactly, right there.
Right down there.
To
right.
Mount Carmel, that they have to use, whether it's a public road or whether it's a driveway. They're saying we're going to have 75 vans coming in and out twice
right.
a day and 10 trucks in and out.
Right.
Right there. That's their concern. And so one of the performance standards that we have to consider is that proposed use and development shall not have an adverse effect upon adjacent property or the public health, safety, and general welfare. So
Right.
can you speak to that? Public
Sure.
health, safety-
Well, and it's a certain amount of relativism. If you put a McDonald's there with a drive-through, you're going to have more traffic there than we would generate. When people hear semis, it gets them excited. 10 deliveries is not an event that anybody needs to get excited about. The vans, again, the vans are not going to like just stack up and block him from going out. I mean, it's like you're coming to a common intersection, and if there's a van, I assume one goes and then the other one goes.
Rather than assume, can we
Yes, go ahead, sorry. Well, and I just wanted to say again, it's not like we have an unimpeded right of way and they got to wait for our, even if it was 10 vans to go out. I would assume common courtesy, somebody goes, next guy goes, one person goes. I mean, that's how it works at an intersection like
yeah,
that.
I think I'd just like to hear more about what that actually looks like
Sure.
on the ground in terms of operations for vans.
Yeah, so the anticipated outbound cadence is about 9 to 10 vans per hour throughout the day. And that, with the last outbound being about 3 p.m. So it's not, there's not clusters of, but between 6 and 8, we're going to send out 70 vans. They're broken up throughout a cadence of the morning and then into the evening. And so, or not evening, but into the afternoon. So there's.
So it's one
Okay.
every 5 to 7 minutes from 5:30 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon.
I can't check that math right away, but yes.
So it's not like, the Chosin Reservoir Retreat where you're seeing 100, trucks lined up, moving at 1 second a minute. There is a cadence to it. I'm glad you asked him the question because he said it more articulately than I did. And again, I just keep coming back to the idea that when people ask, well, what would you do if you lived in that neighborhood? And we always hear this. I always look at it, is there an upgrade? Is this an improvement? And the Kroger use, I'm going to advocate is an improvement based on what I understand this site was used as and the type of trucks that were moving through there. And so I think that the off hours, not peak hours, the cadence, common courtesy that if they come down here, they're not going to be waiting. It's just one car goes, the next car goes. And the historical use of the site, these are improvements to the site. There's going to be very expensive, what I'll call upgrading of deferred maintenance on this property to bring it up and make it aesthetically pleasing. But anyway, that's all I'd like to say. And again, I did not mean to be rude to you, sir. I did hear your presentation. I just had a factual question. Thank you. I know. I just wanted to let him know I respect his opinion.
Any further questions to the board? Sir, did you want to about anything?
Just a quick moment. As Mr. Trainer said, I respect the residential viewpoint that they have nice residents in an area that buffers an industrial zone. Just wanted to point out that the roadway, Bickle Lane there, has actually been improved by Mr. Evans by paving it, making it wider. You can see the curb cut at Mount Carmel. It's a well-sized curb cut for the area. And there is already traffic control on the site as it intersects Bickle, telling vehicles to stop and then turn. And I suspect Kroger will do the same thing in terms of making sure there's a stop sign where that accesses Bickle Lane to create awareness. There's talk about the Red Barn Industrial Complex. It's not an industrial complex. It's a group of warehouse buildings. There's separate litigation involving Mr. Gordon and others pertaining to that site. That's not what we're here to talk about today. A portion of that property is actually zoned industrial in Anderson Township as well. The gravel facility across the street, that's a properly permitted facility. It's been in operation for years. This area has been industrial for as long back as I can remember, which is 30+ years. And Mr. Evans has actually done a lot of beautification in the area with planting trees and trying to responsibly operate his properties, but just want to point that out to the board. I'm not going to try to contradict a number of the concerns expressed by the residents, and I respect those concerns, but want to point out that it is an industrially zoned area, has been, and same with a number of the businesses in that area and along Round Bottom Road. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you. Forward. Close the public hearing. Continue to hear public testimony. We get a motion?
I move that we close the public hearing in case number, whatever this is, 22.
22.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence? No,
Aye.
Mr. Nye? Mr.
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
That.
Aye.
Who'd like to start us off with this discussion of this case?
So I think the conditional use is obviously the bigger one. The variance, if we grant the conditional use, I think we should grant the variance. The variance is not substantial in the context of the conditional use with respect to the landscaping on the northwest area. So let's set the variance aside, I think. Conditional uses can be difficult, and it's especially difficult when you've got an industrial area right up against a residential area. And I think there were some concerns expressed by the witnesses here today, the members of the public, about traffic and the trestle and the roads and so on. And we don't have I don't agree that we can't consider it, but we don't have any jurisdiction to plan a traffic route or anything like that. So there's not a whole heck of a lot we can do about that, though I guess I would probably share some of their concerns about the suitability of the site. It is an industrial district. I think it is consistent with the adopted plans. Public services, there's this soil and water issue that nothing we do here today can excuse their compliance with those requirements. So, they've got an issue they've got to work out, and if it causes a headache for them, that causes a headache for them. That doesn't seem to cut either way to me. They've got to solve that problem. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I'm sure they have a plan, and if they don't, then the county will take that up with them. That's not an Anderson Township zoning issue. The big one is adverse effect. Is this going to have an adverse effect? I mean, let me find the language again. So, in determining whether to grant a special zoning certificate, the board shall consider and apply the following standards. Number 2 is no adverse effect. Proposed use and development shall not have an adverse effect upon the adjacent property or the public health, safety, and general welfare. I think this is a close call. It does seem to be a less intense use than was there before. It's not exactly what the standard is, but that seems relevant in terms of adverse effect. It seems less adverse than some of the other uses it's been recently, right? The traffic is concerning. When it's presented as 75 trucks in when the kids are going to school, that's one thing. When it's 9 trucks an hour, give or take, that does seem pretty different, doesn't it? I don't know. I think the other factors tend to weigh in favor of granting a special zoning certificate. That one, I'm really not sure which way it cuts, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about it.
Okay. All right. Couple items in reviewing this and listening to the testimony both for and against. I'm probably leaning towards with some conditions on it, okay? We'll have to work out something on the landscaping as far as the township accepting the landscape plan as presented. I'd like the lighting plan to be part of that condition, that it meets the lighting standards for the township as far as photometric and all those standards. I'd like to condition it on the expiration of the lease, which resolves a potential issue down the road And I've been told that we can do that, and I don't know how to exactly word that, council, if you could find a way to do that, because I know we have to consider the term of the lease and any extensions, et cetera, and I'll defer to you on how to do that. The stormwater concerns are going to be addressed by Hamilton County. It's not a township issue, and I can, as someone who's involved in construction, I can tell you they're pretty aggressive about addressing those issues. So I have no concerns that Hamilton County won't address stormwater management here. I did have one interesting, it didn't come up. I saw where the diesel fuel tanks are they can be expanded, and we're in executive session, so nobody can respond. But I assume they're gonna be just abandoned in place. That's the way I read the documents. And I was concerned, when I got the document before I had the plans, I was thinking this was an underground storage tank, but it's not. It's an above-ground storage facility, so that takes my concerns away from that. Thinking it was an underground, there would be conditions where we would want to attach to that, okay? And if we can resolve those issues internally with the group, I would support this.
I believe with the stormwater issue, staff was requesting some conditions based on that.
The condition would just be to be in compliance prior to issuing a zoning certificate or something to that effect.
Be in compliance with Hamilton County stormwater management.
Yeah, which again, I think is their intent as well.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything we can enforce as far as installing a stop sign at that intersection. As a township, can we do that or not?
I don't believe so, Ben.
That's not something that, in a minimum, is within the jurisdiction of this.
Okay, it's not, if it's not within our jurisdiction, it's not within our jurisdiction, and we can't do that. Okay. All right, what are your other thoughts?
And I think Mr. Tranter's probably leaning in to say, they'd be happy to say they'll put one on their property, but as to off-site improvements at the end, actual intersection.
Right, but as a township, we can't do that, correct?
As a BZA, you couldn't attach it as a
Yeah,
condition.
right, we couldn't
If
attach
it's
it
a
as
township road, depending on the maintenance.
The township
who's
could as the
responsible
maintenance
for it? The
department,
township may or
but
may
we
not
as a
be able to,
committee
but-
couldn't do it, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
I would say administration could probably better speak to that than
yeah,
planning and zoning staff.
right. All right, someone else's thoughts? I don't look on this as having an adverse effect, especially considering the prior uses. And I believe it's an improvement on what I'm hearing and seeing about the prior uses of the property. So to say an adverse effect, it would have to have a worse effect than what it was prior.
I tend to be in agreement as long as that traffic pattern is what they say it's gonna be.
Yeah.
If it's a moderate, steady flow, I don't see an issue, but if they're bombarding the road with 30, 40 trucks at a time, I think I can see where the traffic pattern gets congested and issues arise. But if that can be alleviated, then I'm fine with it.
Note also in the findings from staff, they had highlighted the emissions and wanted something more comprehensive to, it's not, I don't know, something that we really enforce, but I guess we're looking for something from the appellant, being a little more specific to satisfy.
What were you looking for there? Because they have to comply with all existing laws, rules, and regulations.
Sure, I think, again, from a staff perspective, how they address that is they say they're going to comply, which is great. It's just how will you comply? I think just actionable steps that you're going to take. It doesn't need to be necessarily, I don't think, in depth. It doesn't need to, but again, more than just we will comply, I think is what we're looking for.
I mean, that's typically, though, what you would expect. I mean, I don't know what detail level you're looking for on these plans and specifications for that.
Not necessarily in the plans, but perhaps, again, in
Statement.
some sort of statement, just, again, it doesn't necessarily, they don't need to hire a professional agency or professionals in that
So
industry.
you're just
Something
seeking.
more than we will comply, I think.
Well, I mean, what is more than we will comply? Because if you say you're going to comply with the law, you're going to comply with the law. I don't think we have to have them reiterate the points of law, do we?
Again, I think just from a staff perspective, we'd be more comfortable. Again, the decision is yours at the end of the day. That's just staff's perspective. I think having additional information would be helpful, but
I think oftentimes this standard, remember we're dealing with the Ancor Industrial District, so when you're talking about emissions, emissions can be real, and we don't know what they would be. From the testimony we've heard tonight, it sounds like the emissions may come from vans and semis, perhaps some generators that are on site for the building itself. But I would think compliance would look like complying with whatever U.S. Department of Transportation and ODOT emission standards would be. But again, at the staff level, and especially in context of the industrial area down there, emissions oftentimes can be a lot larger and difficult to quantify than it is here.
I think something else I would say, and Ben, if I'm wrong about this, tell me. That's a section on performance standards. These are things they have to do after they get the conditional use certificate. And if we find out that they are not complying with, if staff finds out that they're not, complying with all applicable U.S. and Ohio Environmental Protection Agency regulations, et cetera, you'll issue a citation, and if they can't resolve it, then the special use terminates. It's a question of their performance after they get it. It's not a question of quality of the application.
Sure.
So yeah, am I right? Am I wrong about that?
Correct.
That's what performance.
Yeah, I mean, like,
So
again,
I don't think we need to concern ourselves too much with what's in the application. They're saying they're going to do it, and I understand staff would love to hear how they're going to do it. But at the end of the day, the question is, if they get it and then they don't do it, then they've got a problem. That's not something that I think we need to concern ourselves with.
Yeah.
Here too.
Yeah.
I do think it's somewhere in between, and the literal language of it says the performance standards for conditional uses is authorized in this article. The Board of Zoning Appeals shall employ the following performance standards in approving conditional uses. Heck, we can talk about the Martin Marietta land use performance standard case, and there was gobs and gobs and gobs of testimony for days about how they were going to go about complying with those performance standards, such that it came to the board and they said, we'll meet those. We've testified of how we're capable of meeting those. That's obviously a much different case than you have here tonight. So I don't think it's just a gimme that you have no ability to review those performance standards as it relates to your approval. It's not an explicitly conditioned subsequent in legal terms.
Yeah. Okay.
It is a condition precedent, but I think the board could consider the testimony of those types of things that cause emissions under those facts, and whether they think that, given the context, they will meet those.
I appreciate that point. All that said, I haven't heard any testimony that makes me think they won't meet any of this, and they have said they will, and I mean, nothing strikes me as anything here that should concern us in that respect. I think they've met their burden in that. I mean, the ultimate question for me is, is there an adverse effect? What do we do about it? Are there any additional conditions we could impose to help make sure there isn't an adverse effect? And I hear you saying no, you don't think it's a concern. That's fine.
Well,
right?
yeah, I don't know how we say, well, they say they're going to, Ohio EPA, whatever the rule is, they're gonna abide by it. So are we gonna say they have to do section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9?
No.
No.
I don't want to impose conditions on that. I'm
Yeah.
just back to the general standards of, is the spirit intent, adverse effect, and let's
Yeah.
setting aside the performance.
Right.
No, I'm not worried about
Yeah. Okay.
Any further discussion?
Sorry, one more thing. The application, the request is for a conditional use for a storage and distribution facility. That's pretty broad. We can impose a condition that's limited to home grocery delivery facility? Is there any reason we couldn't?
Well, based on the plans and specs, we can do it on the plans, right?
Consistent with the plans, and specifications in the application will cover that?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you know where I'm going. So I'm trying to address the neighbor's concern that suddenly it's a distribution facility for nuclear weapons or something. I don't, right? I mean,
I think the cleanest way to honestly do that is just to hit it on, which is what you're critical is, okay, that's not covered, then I think the cleanest thing condition to do is
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
One additional thing we can do the journalization at the next month's meeting, so that way Ben can have a chance to look at it and proofread it just to make sure that.
Yeah. I'm good with that, because part of this, I'm gonna want you to write anyway.
There's no further discussion. Can we get a motion?
You wanna do it?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I will make a motion. I'm concerned about the adverse effects on the neighbors, but I think based on the testimony we have here before us, in particular with the, kind of scale of how many things are going to be in and out over the course of, 10 hours or whatever, I think ultimately it's not going to have a significant adverse effect. And so, and with respect to the variance, as I said, I think it satisfies those criteria too. So I would move with respect to case 22 that we grant the conditional use request for a storage and distribution facility, and that we grant the variance request with respect to the landscape buffering, et cetera, in the northwest area, so long as it's consistent with the plans as submitted, and that the conditional use is tied to the applicant, and we'll wordsmith that language, but so moved.
Do you mind if I add a couple of?
Yeah, go for it.
A landscape plan acceptable in agreement between the township and the applicant, okay? And I'm gonna defer to you guys, I'm not gonna tell you what to do, okay? And on that, lighting plan acceptable to the township standards. And the expiration of the lease, which I'm gonna defer to you to write, because.
Happy to.
Okay.
Just a clarification, Mr. Nye, when you say plans as submitted, do you mean the plans that you received today with the included ADA compliance and the 6-foot fence?
Yeah, plans as of November 7th.
Okay.
Including Exhibit D.
Including Exhibit, what was it, D?
D.
D, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Did we want to condition compliance with Hamilton County Soil and Water as well?
That's a part of the standard building
Yeah, they're gonna do it
application.
regardless,
They're
it's just
gonna
a
have to
few.
go for building permit, they're gonna have to go through stormwater management.
Again, it's a moot point,
Yeah.
but if you want to include it or not.
If it's a moot point, let's leave it out.
Any further discussion?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence? Aye. Mr. Sine?
Aye. With that, this is tentatively approved. It will be further discussed at next month's meeting.
If you guys want to journalize it today, we can work with Ben to draft it, or if we want to do it the next month, it's up to you.
It's up to what, you're gonna have to write part of the language. If you're comfortable doing it tonight, we'll stay. Okay. Are we out of session?
Nope.
Exi-
We got
out
another
of
case.
executive session yet?
We'll-
And I think you guys can deliberate on the postponing the journalization when we get to that part of the.
We'll open up.
No,
the-
no, I asked if we were out of executive session now.
Yeah, I was going to open it up.
Okay, all right. And just as a word to the general public, when we have executive session, we could just take this in the back room in a closed environment where you couldn't see what was going on. We choose as a board not to do that. And so we have our executive session here, which means we can't really interact with you, and take questions and speak to you directly. If, right, no, if,
No, he wasn't intending. He was explaining.
I'm just explaining the situation to all these people out here been wondering what we're doing up here, and they can't participate, okay? No, but as far as this tonight, I'm the secretary, so I'll stay as late as you want to stay to write the document.
We need everybody to.
Well, yeah, you need to adopt the resolution as a
Yeah.
board.
So
I
can-
have a draft.
can we get this done?
Do you want to draft up the resolution?
Oh, did you want to include the 1 year? We didn't include the 1 year, 2 year.
Yeah, we can move on to the next case.
Okay, all right.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay, with that, we're opening up public session back to hear case 24-2024 BZA. Would the staff please read the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to keep this brief, but do the due diligence that this case deserves, since I know there are several members of the community in attendance. The applicant is Timothy Burke of Manley Burke, a law firm on behalf of Todd and Callista Daniels, who are the property owners. This property is located at 6537 Kentucky View Drive, zoned A single-family residence. The applicants request have a conditional use request for a short-term rental at the premises per Article 5.4 I-15 of the zoning resolution, which regulates short-term rentals as conditional uses in a residential area. The applicant is requesting to continue the operation of an existing, currently non-compliant short-term rental in a single-family residence. The applicant has not proposed any changes to the exterior of the property, and the applicant has indicated they plan to continue to use short-term rental platforms such as Airbnb and VRBO should their request be approved by the board. Some history. The home was constructed in 1973, purchased by the current property owners in 2020. A zoning certificate for the in-ground pool and fence was issued in 2020 as well. 2 accessory structures were added around this time as well. We do not have zoning certificates on file for these modifications, which, due to staff oversight, was not identified until today, as well as the canopy addition attached, which also does not have a zoning certificate on file. We have not done a full review of those, but on a cursory review, they do look to be compliant with the zoning resolution, just not, nothing has been submitted for them. In 2023, the property owners hired a contractor to add a dividing wall in their basement, creating an additional 2 rooms. The property owners report that they assumed that the contractor would handle permitting with the building department, Hamilton County Building Department, and the township, which was not the case. In September 2024, a noise complaint was filed with the sheriff's office. As a result of this incident, a subsequent zoning complaint was filed with township staff about the presence of a short-term rental. Staff's understanding is that the short-term rental has ceased receiving new reservations upon receipt of that notice of violation. We have received some concerns from residents that are counter to that, and so we would appreciate clarification from the applicants regarding that status. And then upon notice that a building permit was not on file for the basement renovation, the property owners reported to staff locking the rooms in question and amending the online posting to reflect the decrease in rooms and capacity. Again, we have received some concerns from neighboring residents that there may not be maybe some conflict with that report. So again, we would appreciate further clarification on that from the applicant. Here's the property map, the aerial imagery. So you can see this is one of the accessory structures, which is a metal canopy. This is the other, which is a shed. The detached garage was built at the time the residence was built. And there's a little kind of cloth canopy addition as well. Topography map, mostly flat. The property slopes down towards Kellogg Road and the Ohio River and Belterra towards the south. Here are some photos of the front of the property taken by staff, showing their privacy fence, that shed. Here's some photos taken from the Airbnb postings. So some of the rooms, the backyard with the pool, an aerial image of the backyard, and the application. which I'm sure the applicant will elaborate on. Okay. So staff's findings are, in terms of the general considerations, the proposed use and development would comply with the spirit and intent of the zoning resolution with the district purposes by meeting the conditional use standards. This is a single-family residential neighborhood, and the conditions are intend to keep the use within the kind of use that would be allowed within a single-family residence without conditional use. So what a regular property owner using their home would be allowed to do per zoning if they were living on their property or renting it to a long-term renter. No adverse effect. The proposed short-term rental, in staff's view, would not have a significantly more adverse effect upon adjacent properties or the public health, safety, and welfare than what would be, again, permitted in a single-family residence by a typical property owner. The house and landscaping will be professionally maintained. They stated that they intend to address noise concerns by adding a noise meter to the property and modifying the rental rules to discourage future noisy behavior. The applicant is not proposing any exterior changes, therefore it will respect natural, scenic, and historic features of significant public interest. Granting a conditional use won't impact those. Staff finds that the conditional use is in accordance of the goals and of the comprehensive plan. Anderson Township is home to diverse housing options to meet changing demographics and again, maintaining existing housing stock. For the specific criteria for short-term rentals, the applicants addressed that the parking area, and it should be noted that this condition has been removed as part of text amendments, which have not fully come into effect as well. But the applicant says that parking will be in the driveway, and they have marked on their property the limit at which renters should be able to, or would be permitted to park per zoning. Vehicular use area will be located and designed as to minimize impact on the neighborhood. They have addressed this requirement. Staff finds that the vehicular use would not be different from that which would be permitted at a single-family residence. The applicant has taken steps to eliminate large parties and reduce noise to maintain a typical residential environment. They state that they plan to install a noise meter. They have amended their rental rules to discourage disruptive behavior and have clear lines of contact for guests. No exterior alterations that depart from residential character. Their plans are consistent with that, as is the current existing structure and accessory structures. No changes to lighting are proposed. The applicant does provide a plan for which neighborhood residents within the vicinity are informed that they can raise complaints to the township as well as contact the property owners if issues arise at the beginning of each season. No meals will be served to the general public, and the applicant submitted an emergency response plan, which has also been removed as part of recently approved text amendments, currently in their 30-day appeal period. And then here are the standards And I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has. Oh, yeah.
Could you clarify on your page 3, numbers F and Z, where you say there have been changes to the plan, and what those changes are specifically and when they're taking into effect?
Sure. So you're talking about the criteria that have been removed as part of text amendment?
Yeah, is that is that from zoning itself, out here?
Sure. So again, in future, when we review short-term rental, when we look at the criteria in Article 5.4, it won't have F or Z as a part of the criteria for short-term rentals. Specifically, Z, when we're looking at emergency plans, we found that we are the only agency that would require emergency plan, and we would be the least. I mean, if fire is not requiring an emergency plan, it doesn't make much sense why zoning would require an emergency plan, since the emergency plan doesn't necessarily have anything to do with zoning. For F, it's a difficult one for staff to enforce. In addition, if you were to own a property as a single family owner and you utilize it in the same fashion that probably most of the neighbors here use it, we don't put any conditions on their homes as far as how they can use their driveway. Additionally, for renters, for long-term rentals, we don't have any regulations as far as how they can use their driveways. So I think that's the way it was written. I think was to avoid the front yard being used as a parking lot, and it was worded a little weird. So as far as enforcement and then intent, it didn't necessarily seem like it matched. So those two were removed.
So if a family on the street would have a Christmas gathering and have 15 people parking on the street, there would be no restriction on that. Is that where this came from?
Correct. And similarly, F and H are kind of similar in nature. Again, they're both talking about vehicular use in a residential area. H probably does I mean, again, this is my personal opinion. I think H does a better job of addressing that, talking about how it's going to minimize impact, again, as opposed to restricting where you can park. Because again, that seems strange that we would only inhibit that on one particular use and not any other use in that zoning district.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And these, those text amendments have gone through Zoning Commission and Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission and the trustees, and so
You get just to add, so those have been approved. They have not been codified, again, just because we're in that 30-day appeal period at this point. So we just want to include them, again, as part of this appeal. It was in their packet, so that's why it's in our application as well.
Any further questions? Would the appellant or the appellant's representative please step forward, state their name, address, and present their appeal?
Good evening. My name is Tim Burke from the Manley Burke Law Firm. We did file the application on behalf of the Daniels, and Mr. and Mrs. Daniels are with me tonight. I'd like to clarify just a couple of things as we begin.
I'm sorry, could you also mention your address, please?
I'm sorry. 225 West Broad Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45202.
Thank you.
First of all, we intend, unless something changes from what we hear from others, and obviously we're going to be badly outnumbered tonight. I understand that. I intend to call one witness, and that is Callista Daniels. It may take me a tad longer than 4 minutes to question her for the record, but that's what I intend to do, in part to respond to some of the comments that have been made, both staff tonight and by neighbors in a couple of the letters that we have seen that they have submitted. I do want to clarify that after the opponents have testified, that we'll have the opportunity to rebut that, and I may do it in the form of a closing argument, if that's appropriate. I do have a series of exhibits that I want to provide. It's not as bad as it looks. There are 6 sets of a total of 23 exhibits. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with them, but I provide them because they are all public records. The first 10 of those are minutes of your own meetings at which you have considered prior conditional uses for short-term rentals in the last roughly 2.5 years. And the last set of exhibits are from the county auditor's records that will show you the layout of each one of the prior short-term rentals that you considered since April of 2022. And I believe there's a total of 13 that you considered, 12 of which you ultimately approved. And I provided the auditor's plats because I wanted you to be able to compare those to what is Exhibit 7 in the application, that we provided this initially so you could see who would receive the notices that are provided for as the communication to neighbors. But Exhibit 7 also gives you the ability to compare what this neighborhood looks like as compared to other neighborhoods where you have approved short-term rentals. And that's really all I have to say about those exhibits. I just want to make sure that a set of those is included in the records before you tonight. Now, if I may move on, I will call Callista Daniels and go through a series of questions with her. Callista, you've been sworn in, correct?
Correct.
And can you, for the record, state your name and address?
Callista Daniels, 6537 Kentucky View Drive.
And who's the guy sitting next to you over here?
My husband, Todd Daniels.
And the two of you own the property on Kentucky View?
Correct.
How long have you lived there?
Can I ask what your address is? 6537?
37. I'm the owner of the property.
You live in this property?
Yes.
You live in it?
I do, yeah. Our intention is to live there for the majority of the year and only have it available for about 5 months out of the season during the summer months into the early fall.
Good.
Yeah. It's a beautiful time.
And I really appreciate having all these documents.
I'm
I-
glad.
My name's in there a number of times.
Oh.
Well, I suspect most of your names are in there because most of you have considered short-term rentals in the past.
Absolutely.
And obviously, there's a point we wanted to make in demonstrating that there are a series of precedents in which you have approved short-term rentals in communities very similar to the community that they live in and that these folks live in. That's the point of that as a part of the record. Callista, why did you decide to do short-term rentals on the property?
Well, my husband and I have stayed at short-term rentals. We like the idea of it. We became empty nesters a couple years ago, not quite. I have a son that's a sophomore in college, and he was our last son to go. And we were like, well, we have this big, beautiful home, and we'd like to share it. We thought it was really neat. We had people concur, even neighbors initially, but it's another story. But that's why we decided to do it, is we felt like it would be a good fit.
When did you begin using VRBO and Airbnb to do short-term rentals on the property?
Mid-May was our very first stay.
Mid-May
Of 2024, of this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you are renting out your property for short-term rentals, where do you and your husband live?
Well, we purchased a lot along the Ohio River and Riverview Pines, and we stay in a camper, and it's great. We've actually really enjoyed it.
How much time does it take you to get from that site to your home on Kentucky View?
10 minutes flat.
And what makes that an important fact to consider with regard to your use of your property as a short-term rental?
We didn't want to be very far. My husband sticks close to home always, and occasionally I might be out of town for a day or two, but pretty much we wanted to be close by.
And when did you find out that the township approval was required for the short-term rentals of your property?
I believe it was like on the 25th or possibly the 26th of September.
And you heard mention that there was a complaint made
Yes.
about the short-term rental.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, we had some people that were staying there, and they had a gender reveal party, and it kind of went haywire. It was loud.
Kind of?
It went very haywire. It was disturbing to us as well. I mean, we don't want that at our home at all. We don't want to disturb our community, and we don't want to disturb our home either, so.
And what did you do about that?
We instantly changed the rules. At first, we had it to where you could have up to 40 guests if you wanted to have a gathering. We were anticipating a pool party, like maybe people would come and have their family to come and swim, because most of the people that were there were families. But we changed that. We completely said no parties allowed, 0 parties. We reduced the amount of people by 4 that could stay there, and also said that you can only have up to 4 guests, and that all guests are to be named. And also I said no loud parties. I put rules in, no loud parties, no gatherings, no displays. Don't disturb the neighbors, respect the community, no speeding. I put a lot of that wording in the house rules after that immediately, the very next day.
And one of the issues that staff has commented on based on something they heard from one of the neighbors is, what have you done about continuing to rent for the next season?
Well, we have put up we do have a noise meter in the back now that asks people to be quiet. If you're looking out the back, it's on the left side of the pool, over kind of close to the house. We thought that would be the best spot to reduce the noise to the neighbors over there. So see where the black covering is, which has been there since we put the pool in. We put a noise meter, and it literally says, please be quiet, really, really loud if you're too loud. And that's not even that loud that you have to be for them to for it to yell at you to be quiet.
And while you answered a different question than I asked, I'm
Okay,
going to come
I'm
back
sorry.
to that in a minute.
Okay.
But first, you also have some video cameras available, don't you?
Yes, we do have one camera currently on the front of the garage to monitor anybody coming and going on that way, because they're directed to come in through the gate and through the back door. But we are going to add an additional camera to the front of the house to monitor anything coming in and out of the front of the home, so that we can monitor it to make sure that the rules are being followed.
And the question that I was trying to get to is the issue of, are you still listed on Airbnb?
Well, it is still on there, but we're not taking any new. I've been requested a couple of times for next season, and I have not approved them. I've said no. We're in the middle of handling something
And
locally.
The fact is, you had some rentals that were reserved for next season before you learned about this issue.
Correct. We do have several for next year booked, but that's up in the air.
And when was it you stopped taking rentals for next year?
Oh, immediately. As soon as I received the letter, I also canceled the very last 2 stays that were scheduled. And I haven't taken any more new ones since then till we can.
And how many short-term rentals did you have this past season?
We had 20 short-term rentals stay this past season, 20 different families.
And the gender reveal party, was that the 20th?
I think that was like the 19th or something like that.
But
Oh,
up
no,
at-
no, I'm sorry. No, that was the 17th. There were 2 after that, but I was unaware of the situation.
Because
As
you
soon
hadn't
as I
gotten
heard, I
notice.
hadn't gotten notice, and as soon as I found out, I canceled my last 2.
And you heard about the problems with the gender reveal party while it was still going on, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
What did you do?
I immediately contacted the people that were staying there and told her she needed to dismantle the party and ask everyone to leave immediately, and she did. But took her some time. I think it took her like an hour and a half to get everybody gone. They had family in from out of town. I don't think they really wanted to leave, but they did. They left.
And did you have any substantial problems with any of the other short-term rentals during 2024?
No. I had a complaint about street parking, and another complaint about someone being loud by the pool in the evening time.
Parking is legal on Kentucky View, is it not?
Correct. On my side of the street, basically, if you wanted to put it, the side of the street that we're on is where you can park.
Did any of the complaints about parking on the street relate to illegal parking on the wrong side of the street?
Not to my knowledge, no. No one said anybody was parking on the wrong side of the street. I don't have any record of that.
You reviewed the application that we filed with the township on
Yes.
behalf of you and your husband prior to it being filed.
Correct.
And you read the letter that is the application carefully.
Multiple times.
And did that letter truly and accurately state the facts as you know them?
Yes.
Have you had complaints about parking in your driveway?
Yeah, I did have someone send me pictures of people parked in my driveway, that they were parked all the way down to the street, not into the street, but all the way down to the street in my driveway.
And that would have in fact been contrary to the requirement that, as I understand it, is still on the books but is about to come off, that says you shouldn't be able to park cars within 50 feet of the street, which only serves to encourage cars to park on the street if you're going to impose a limitation on the driveways. But while when we filed this application, frankly, I wasn't aware of the fact that already moving through the rezoning process were the two amendments that staff referred to. And that's why we've got comments in here, both suggesting how they could comply with that 50-foot limitation in the driveway, and secondly, what they would do about supplying a safety plan. Both of those requirements are going to go away as the ordinance, the resolution amending the code is coming into effect. And I don't think it would be fair to continue to impose those limitations on this use after those changes come into effect. You've seen the letter from Mr. Spanagonians?
Yes, I did, yes.
Has he ever talked to you about any complaints?
No, I've never heard from him. This is the first I've heard him having anything to say.
In his letter, he also says that parking on the street caused problems when attempting to get help to deal with a tree or trees that had been damaged from the storm back on September 27th.
I didn't know anything about, no one said anything to me about that. In that letter is the first time I heard about trees falling and having trouble getting to them, but we have a rather wide street. So and when you're parking, you can still have two people pass each other.
And there is a new letter that you and I both just saw this afternoon that, among other things, says that your short-term rental causes strangers to appear to be scoping out the neighborhood, and as a result they have to keep their garage doors closed. Have you ever heard that suggested before?
No, I didn't. I've never heard it that anyone is scoping the neighborhood out. No. I mean, the people that have been staying there are mostly families.
And that same second letter also says that you're trolling for strangers on the internet. Is that what you're doing?
No, not at all. I'm not trolling for them. I mean, I actually don't. It's not instant booking either. I try to vet the people that come. I have 24 hours to make a decision who gets to stay or not, to find out who's going to be there and why. But yeah, no, I don't troll.
And that same letter also mentions criminal acts. Other than what happened on September 15th, are you